Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Cross Harry. We are thrilled to present today's story. What if John Wick was Harry's godfather instead of Sirius, and the entire wizarding world feared a Muggle? If these stories bring joy to your day, please consider liking and subscribing. Every bit of support helps us continue this passion project. Now, prepare yourself for an amazing tale. Chapter 1, Rules of the Continental, again. The command hung in the air of the training room. Harry wiped sweat from his brow, adjusted his stance, and nodded. He was exhausted, but Godfather never accepted that as an excuse. Not when your life depended on it. 3 attackers. You're cornered. Go. 3 training dummies sprang to life, circling the 11-year-old boy. Harry didn't hesitate. He dropped low, sweeping the legs of the first dummy before rolling toward the weapon rack. His hands found the rubber training knife exactly where he knew it would be. 2 quick motions and he disabled the second attacker. The third came at him from behind, but Harry had already anticipated the move. He used the dummy's momentum against it, redirecting its force into a controlled flip that ended with Harry's training knife at its throat. John Wick watched from the corner, his face betraying nothing. But Harry knew. He'd done well. 7 seconds. Better than yesterday. John stepped forward, his movements precise and economical. Your roll was sloppy. In a real situation, I'd be dead. I know. Harry grinned despite the criticism. A ghost of a smile touched John's lips. Go clean up. Breakfast in 10. Their house sat isolated on 20 acres of woodland, far from prying eyes. The training facility occupied the basement level, a sprawling complex of practice rooms, weapon ranges, and obstacle courses. Above ground, it looked like any other country home, albeit with security systems that would make most government agencies jealous. Harry showered quickly, changing into fresh clothes before heading to the kitchen. John was already there, cooking eggs with military precision. 2 plates, 2 glasses of orange juice, 2 pieces of toast. Everything in its place. Sleep well? John asked, sliding a plate toward Harry. Yeah. Had that dream again though. John paused, spatula in hand. The green light? Harry nodded, shoveling eggs into his mouth. Getting more frequent. Almost every night now. They ate in comfortable silence. This was their routine: training, breakfast, lessons, more training, dinner, then quiet evenings where John would clean weapons while Harry read or they watched old movies together. It wasn't conventional, but Harry had never known anything else. The mail slot clattered. John was on his feet instantly, hand moving to the weapon concealed at his waist. Harry remained seated. They had drilled this countless times. Only after John had retrieved the mail and verified it was safe did he return to the table. Bills, magazine subscription, and... John's brow furrowed as he examined a thick envelope made of yellowish parchment. This is addressed to you. Harry looked up in surprise. Nobody sent him mail. Nobody even knew he existed outside of their small circle. Mr. H. Potter, the upstairs bedroom, Wickwood Lodge, Harry read aloud. That's weird. How do they know which bedroom is mine? John was already examining the wax seal on the back. His expression darkened. I've been expecting this, he said finally. Just not so soon. Harry waited. John didn't elaborate immediately, which meant he was choosing his words carefully. That only happened when the conversation involved Harry's parents. Remember what I told you about your mother and father? John asked, setting the letter down between them. They were murdered when I was a baby. By a bad man. John nodded. There were things about your parents, about their world, that I haven't told you yet. I plan to when you turn 13, but... He pushed the envelope toward Harry. Open it. Harry broke the seal and unfolded several pieces of parchment. He read aloud, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confede, of Wizards, Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry looked up, waiting for the punchline. Is this a joke? No. John leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes unreadable. Your parents were wizards, Harry. Magic is real. Harry stared at his godfather. In 10 years, John Wick had never once lied to him. He'd been brutally honest about the dangers of the world, about why they lived in isolation, about the men who might come looking for them one day. John didn't joke, and he didn't make things up. Magic, Harry repeated. Like, pulling rabbits out of hats. No. Real magic. Power that breaks the laws of physics as we understand them. John stood up, pacing the kitchen with controlled energy. Your mother could make objects float with a word. Your father could transform himself into a stag. Harry's mind raced. And the man who killed them? A dark wizard. The worst of their kind. John stopped pacing. When he murdered your parents and tried to kill you, something happened. His power rebounded. Left you with that scar, made you famous in their world. Harry's hand automatically went to the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. Famous? For something I don't even remember. They call you the boy who lived. John's voice held a note of contempt. The only person ever to survive the killing curse. If I'm so famous, why have I been living here with you? Why didn't any of these wizards come for me before? John's expression tightened. They tried. Dumbledore, the headmaster mentioned in that letter, wanted to place you with your mother's sister after your parents died. I disagreed. The understatement hung in the air. Harry had heard enough stories about John's past to understand what disagreed might entail. You took me instead. I was your godfather. It was my right. John's tone made it clear the subject wasn't up for discussion. I made arrangements to keep you hidden from both worlds. My world and theirs. Harry glanced back at the letter. So what happens now? Do I have to go to this school? That's up to you. John sat back down. I can continue your education here. But your parents wanted you to attend Hogwarts. It's where they met, where they learned to control their abilities. Do I have these abilities too? You do. There have been incidents. The snake at the zoo last year. The time the bullies from town followed you into the woods and somehow got lost for 6 hours. The broken windows that repaired themselves. Harry remembered each event, but had never connected them. I thought those were coincidences. No coincidences, John said firmly. Just untrained power. Power that could be dangerous without proper instruction. Harry reread the letter, focusing on the list of required items. Wand, cauldron, spell books. Where would we even get this stuff? There's a place in London. Hidden from regular people, Muggles, they call us. Us? You're not. John shook his head. I have no magic. But I know their world better than most Muggles. Your father made sure of that. Harry tried to process everything. His entire understanding of reality had just shifted. Dad told you about magic? Isn't that against their rules or something? A rare, genuine smile crossed John's face. James and I were friends long before he knew he was a wizard. When the letter came for him, he broke the rules to tell me. We were like brothers. So you've known about magic since you were my age? Yes. And about the dangers that come with it. John's expression grew serious again. The wizarding world has its own politics, its own criminals, its own wars. The man who killed your parents had followers. Some are in prison. Others claim they were forced to serve him and walk free. Harry's training kicked in immediately. Threat assessment. Significant but manageable. They fear you because of what happened when you were a baby. But they fear me more. Why would wizards fear you? You just said you don't have magic. John hesitated. After your parents were murdered, I responded. The magical community learned that guns and knives work just as well on wizards as they do on anyone else. If they're not expecting them. Harry could read between the lines. John Wick, his quiet, methodical godfather, had gone to war with wizards. And apparently won. They call me Baba Yaga. Harry recognized the name from stories. The boogeyman? No. I'm the one you sent to kill the boogeyman. John's voice was matter-of-fact. In both worlds. Before Harry could ask more questions, something thumped against the window. Both turned to see an owl pecking at the glass, another letter tied to its leg. John sighed. And so it begins. They know where you are now. Over the next week, the letters kept coming. 2, then 5, then dozens pouring down the chimney and being pushed under the door. John disposed of them efficiently, but his face grew increasingly concerned. We need to make a decision, he told Harry on the 7th day. They won't stop until you respond. Harry had been thinking about nothing else. I want to learn. About my parents, about magic. But I don't want to leave you. John nodded, weighing something in his mind. There's someone we need to see. Get your go bag. 2 hours later, they were in London, John driving a nondescript black sedan through midday traffic. They parked near Charing Cross Road, and John led Harry toward what appeared to be a rundown shopfront. Most pedestrians walked past without giving it a second glance, but John walked straight toward the door. The Leaky Cauldron, Harry read from the worn sign. A gateway between worlds. Stay close to me. The moment they stepped inside, Harry understood. The pub was filled with people wearing robes and pointed hats. A man at the bar stirred his tea without touching the spoon. 2 women at a corner table were reading newspapers with moving pictures. Conversation died as people noticed the newcomers. One by one, heads turned toward them. Harry saw eyes widen in recognition, not of him, but of John. Bloody hell, a man whispered. It's him. The barkeeper dropped the glass he was cleaning. It shattered on the floor, but nobody seemed to notice. Mr. Wick, he said, voice trembling slightly. We weren't, that is to say, welcome. John nodded politely. Tom. We're just passing through. He placed a hand on Harry's shoulder, guiding him toward the back of the pub. Harry could feel the stairs following them, could hear the whispers starting as they passed. Is that the Potter boy? With the Baba Yaga himself. Merlin's beard, I thought he was just a story they told to scare Death Eaters. In the small courtyard behind the pub, John withdrew a piece of paper from his pocket and counted bricks on the wall. He tapped one with his finger. Nothing happened. Damn, John muttered. I forgot. Magical signature required. He turned to Harry. Touch this brick. Harry reached out and pressed his finger against the brick. Immediately, the wall began to shift and rearrange itself, creating an archway that opened onto a bustling street filled with the strangest shops Harry had ever seen. Diagon Alley, John said. Main shopping district for the wizarding world in London. But we're not here for school supplies yet. He led Harry confidently through the crowd. People scattered before them, whispering and pointing. John ignored them all, walking with purpose until they reached a grand white building that towered over the neighboring shops. Gringotts Bank, John explained. Run by goblins. We need to bypass it for now. They continued past the bank to a narrow side street with a discreet sign, Horizon Alley. Here, the shops looked more upscale, the clientele more reserved. John stopped in front of a building that resembled a luxury hotel more than a shop. The gold lettering on the door simply read, The Continental. A few rules before we enter, John said quietly. This is neutral ground. No business is conducted on Continental grounds. Ever. Second, every transaction requires payment in proper coin. I'll handle that. Third, speak to no one unless I introduce you. Understood? Harry nodded. The Continental seemed to straddle both worlds, magical and non-magical, in a way that made Harry instantly alert. His training kicked in as they entered, his eyes automatically scanning for exits, threats, and defensive positions. The lobby featured marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Wizards in expensive robes mingled with men and women in tailored suits. All exuded the same dangerous confidence Harry recognized in his godfather. The concierge looked up as they approached. Mr. Wick. It's been some time. Sharon. I need to see the manager. Karen's eyes flickered briefly to Harry before returning to John. Of course. He's been expecting you. They were escorted to an elevator that descended below ground level. When the doors opened, they stepped into an elegant office where a distinguished older man sat behind an antique desk. Jonathan, the man greeted them warmly. I was wondering when you'd bring the boy. Winston. John nodded. You've heard about the letters. My dear fellow, the entire wizarding world has been abuzz for days. The boy who lived, found at last, in the company of the Baba Yaga, no less. Winston turned his attention to Harry. You look remarkably like your father, though you have, my mother's eyes, Harry finished. John has photos. Winston smiled. Indeed. I knew your parents quite well. Members in good standing, both of them. Members? Harry asked. The Continental serves a specialized clientele, Winston explained. Those who operate in the shadows between worlds. Your father found us useful during the war against Voldemort. John tensed at the name, but said nothing. Voldemort? Harry repeated. The wizard who killed my parents. The very same. Most wizards fear to speak his name even now. Winston gestured for them to sit. I assume you're here about Hogwarts. John nodded. Harry needs to understand what he's walking into. Both at the school and in the wider wizarding world. Winston poured himself a drink. It's quite complex. The magical community believes Harry destroyed Voldemort as a baby. Made him a legend. But after the attack on your parents' home. He glanced at John. Well, let's just say young Harry's godfather created a legend of his own. Harry looked at John. What did you do? John remained impassive. What was necessary? What was necessary, Winston repeated with a small smile. Jonathan eliminated 14 of Voldemort's followers in 3 days. Without magic. Without mercy. Harry had always known his godfather was dangerous. The training, the weapons, the security measures at home, all pointed to a man with enemies. But this was different. They had marked themselves with a symbol, John explained. A skull with a snake. Made it easy to identify the targets. The dark mark, Winston nodded. The Death Eaters never imagined a Muggle could pose any threat. By the time they realized their error, Jonathan had already cut their numbers in half. Created quite the stir in both our worlds. The Continental offered assistance, John added. Intelligence. Access. In return for my services on occasion. Winston spread his hands. A mutually beneficial arrangement. Your godfather has been invaluable in matters requiring discretion. Harry processed this information, fitting it into what he already knew about John. The late-night phone calls. The occasional weekend trips John took alone. The combat skills he'd been teaching Harry since he could walk. So everyone at that pub recognized you because I'm the nightmare they tell their children about, John said simply. The Muggle who hunts wizards. Winston cleared his throat. Which brings us to your current situation. Hogwarts is run by Albus Dumbledore, a powerful wizard and a formidable political figure. He arranged for your placement with your mother's sister after your parents' deaths. Until I intervened, John added. Yes, quite dramatically as I recall, Winston said dryly. Dumbledore has been searching for you ever since. Now that you've been located, he'll insist on meeting. I won't let him take Harry. Winston raised a placating hand. No one is suggesting that, Jonathan. But the boy needs magical education. Untrained power is dangerous to everyone, including Harry himself. Harry thought about the strange incidents John had mentioned. The broken windows. The snake at the zoo. What if I don't want to go? Then we find alternative arrangements, John said immediately. Private tutors. Another school. Winston shook his head. Hogwarts is the premier magical institution in Britain. More importantly, attending would establish Harry's position in their society. Absence would be, politically problematic. A telephone on Winston's desk rang once. He answered, listened briefly, then looked up at John. It seems your reputation for timing remains impeccable. Dumbledore has just entered the Continental. John's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but Winston raised an eyebrow. Continental rules, Jonathan. I've arranged a meeting room. Neutral ground. They followed Winston to a conference room where an elderly man with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles waited. He wore purple robes embroidered with stars and a matching pointed hat. Despite his eccentric appearance, power seemed to radiate from him. Mr. Wick, Dumbledore said calmly. We meet at last. John said nothing, positioning himself slightly in front of Harry. And Harry. Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled behind his glasses. You look so much like your father. But you have, my mother's eyes, Harry finished, growing tired of the observation. I know. Dumbledore smiled. Indeed. May I say what an extraordinary pleasure it is to finally meet you. We've been looking for you for a very long time. Not hard enough, John said coldly. Or you'd have found us years ago. On the contrary, Mr. Wick. I knew precisely where Harry was within 3 months of your appropriation of his guardianship. Dumbledore's voice remained pleasant, but his eyes had lost their twinkle. I chose to respect your role as his godfather, despite my reservations. John's eyebrows rose slightly, the closest he came to showing surprise. You knew and did nothing. I monitored from a distance. Magical monitoring only, I assure you, I respected your privacy. I merely needed to confirm Harry's safety and well-being. Dumbledore turned to Harry. I trust you received your Hogwarts letter. Letters, Harry corrected. About 100 of them. Dumbledore chuckled. Yes, our delivery system can be quite persistent when initial communications go unanswered. I apologize for the inconvenience. Why are you here? John asked bluntly. To discuss Harry's education, of course. Term begins September 1st. There are supplies to purchase, arrangements to be made. Harry hasn't decided if he's attending yet. Dumbledore's expression registered genuine surprise. Not attending. My dear boy, Hogwarts has educated every Potter for generations. Your name has been down since birth. I don't know anything about magic, Harry said honestly. Or Hogwarts. Or any of this. A situation easily remedied, Dumbledore assured him. Hogwarts is the finest school of witchcraft and wizardry in the world. You'll learn to control your abilities, make friends with others like yourself, and take your rightful place in our world. His place is wherever he chooses, John interjected. I've made sure he can make that choice freely. Tension crackled between the two men. Winston cleared his throat. Perhaps a compromise. Harry attends Hogwarts, while Mr. Wick retains full guardianship and visitation rights. He looked at Dumbledore. The Continental would be willing to facilitate secure communications and transportation. Dumbledore considered this. Students typically remain at Hogwarts through term, returning home only for Christmas and summer holidays. Unacceptable, John said immediately. Regular contact and emergency extraction protocols would be non-negotiable. Harry watched the men discuss his future. Part of him was angry, he should have known about magic years ago. But another part understood John's caution. He'd raised Harry to assess threats, to prepare for every contingency. The wizarding world represented too many unknowns. "I want to try," Harry said suddenly. All three men turned to look at him. "I want to learn about magic. About my parents. But I'm not giving up my other training." John studied Harry's face, then nodded once. "One term. We reassess in December." "Excellent," Winston said before Dumbledore could respond. "Now, practicalities. Harry needs school supplies. I suggest Diagon Alley, with proper security arrangements of course." "I can escort," Dumbledore began. "I'll take him," John cut in. "Your presence in Diagon Alley might cause undue commotion, Mr. Wick." "Already handled that," John replied. "We passed through the leaky cauldron to get here." "Ah." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled again. "I imagine that created quite a stir." Winston smirked. "The Continental has already received 17 inquiries about increased security consultations since Jonathan's arrival." Harry looked at his godfather with new understanding. John Wick wasn't just feared in the criminal underworld. He was feared by wizards, people who could perform actual magic. "There's the matter of Harry's key," Dumbledore said, reaching into his pocket. "For his vault at Gringotts. His parents left him quite well provided for." John took the small golden key. "We'll handle the financial arrangements." "Very well. I shall see you at Hogwarts, Harry." Dumbledore stood to leave. "One last thing, Mr. Wick. Regardless of our past disagreements, we share a common goal, Harry's safety. The wizard who murdered James and Lily Potter may not be as gone as the world believes." John's expression didn't change, but Harry saw his posture shift subtly. "Explain." "Merely a caution. There are signs that concern me. Harry will be protected at Hogwarts, I assure you." "He's been protected for 10 years, John said coldly. "That won't change." After Dumbledore left, Winston turned to John. "Diplomatic as ever, Jonathan." He wanted to leave Harry with people who didn't want him. Who would have hated what he is? The blood protection theory had merit, Winston noted. Living with his mother's blood relatives would have provided certain magical safeguards. And left him vulnerable in every other way. John's tone made it clear the subject was closed. "We need supplies. And information." Winston nodded. "I've taken the liberty of arranging an account manager at Gringotts who's familiar with our organization. As for the rest." He handed John a business card with a single word, Taylor. "Continental services extend to Diagon Alley. We maintain certain affiliations. The tailor will see you're properly outfitted for both worlds." They left the Continental and returned to the main street of Diagon Alley. This time, Harry noticed how people scrambled out of their path. Shoppers pressed themselves against storefronts. Parents pulled their children close. Whispers followed them like ripples in a pond. "Is it always like this for you?" Harry asked. "Only in their world," John replied. "They remember what happened after your parents died. Winston said you killed 14 wizards. I eliminated 14 threats to your safety." Harry nodded. John never sugarcoated the realities of violence. Using guns. Knives. Whatever was necessary. Magic users tend to rely on their wands exclusively. It creates a tactical vulnerability. They reached a gleaming white building with burnished bronze doors. "Gringotts," John explained. "The Goblin Bank. Show respect but never weakness." Harry had grown up with John's rules for different environments. Banks meant situational awareness, maintaining sight lines, and identifying secondary exits. But nothing prepared him for the actual goblins, small creatures with pointed features and clever eyes who regarded all humans with obvious suspicion. John approached a counter and presented the key Dumbledore had given them. "We'd like to access Harry Potter's vault." Winston of the Continental recommended manager Griphook. The goblin's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Of course. Follow me." They were led through marble hallways to a private office where another goblin sat behind a massive desk. "Mr. Wick. Mr. Potter. I am Griphook." The goblin's voice was all business. "We've been expecting you to claim the Potter vault eventually. What can you tell us about Harry's financial situation?" John asked. Griphook opened a ledger. "The Potter vault contains approximately 50,000 galleons in liquid assets. There are also various properties and investments managed by the bank, generating annual returns of approximately 3,000 galleons. Conversion to pound sterling. Approximately £250,000 in liquid assets. The properties include the damaged cottage in Godric's Hollow, a London townhouse currently under magical preservation, and shares in several wizarding businesses." John nodded. "We'll need a detailed portfolio review. For now, Harry needs funds for school supplies." Griphook produced a small leather pouch. "This is linked directly to the Potter vault. Simply reach inside and state the amount needed. For larger transactions, visit any Gringotts location." "Security measures?" John asked. "The pouch is blood-bound to Mr. Potter. Anyone else attempting unauthorized access will find their hands quite literally full of scorpions." Harry took the pouch cautiously. "Is there a limit to how much I can withdraw?" "For a minor, 100 galleons per day unless accompanied by your guardian." Griphook looked at John. "We've been instructed to recognize Mr. Wick's full guardianship authority, despite certain, ministerial objections." "The Continental's influence?" John guessed. Griphook's thin lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Goblins recognize power regardless of its source, Mr. Wick. Your reputation transcends wizarding politics." They left Gringotts with Harry's money pouch and a better understanding of his inheritance. Their next stop was a narrow shop with a sign reading, "Ollivanders, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. The wand is a wizard's primary tool," John explained. "And their primary vulnerability. Never lose it. Never rely on it exclusively." The shop was dusty and cramped, with thousands of narrow boxes piled to the ceiling. An old man with wide, pale eyes appeared from between the shelves. "I wondered when I'd be seeing you, Mr. Potter," he said softly. "And Mr. Wick as well." "How unexpected." John tensed slightly. "You know me." "I know of you." Ollivander's gaze returned to Harry. "It seems only yesterday that your mother and father were in here buying their first wands. Your mother's was 10¼ inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice for charm work. Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand. 11 inches. Pliable. Excellent for transfiguration." Ollivander moved closer, examining Harry's scar. "And that's where. I'm sorry to say I sold the wand that did it. 13½ inches. You. Powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands. Well, if I'd known what that wand was going out into the world to do." John cleared his throat. "We're here for Harry's wand." Of course, of course." Ollivander pulled out a tape measure. "Which is your wand arm?" "I'm right-handed," Harry said. "But I train with both." Ollivander's eyebrows rose. "Ambidextrous by training? Interesting." The tape measure began measuring Harry by itself, arm length, finger width, nostril diameter, while Ollivander selected boxes from the shelves. "Every Ollivander wand has a core of a powerful magical substance, Mr. Potter. We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons. No two Ollivander wands are the same, just as no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are quite the same. And of course, you will never get such good results with another wizard's wand. He handed Harry a wand. Beechwood and dragon heartstring. 9 inches. Nice and flexible. Just take it and give it a wave. Harry took the wand and waved it, feeling foolish, but Ollivander snatched it back almost immediately. Maple and phoenix feather. 7 inches. Quite whippy. Harry tried, but had hardly raised the wand when it was snatched back. No, here, ebony and unicorn hair, 8.5 inches, springy. Go on, try it out. Harry tried wand after wand. The pile of rejected ones grew higher, but Ollivander seemed increasingly excited. Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry, we'll find the perfect match here somewhere. I wonder, now, yes, why not, unusual combination, holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. Harry took the wand and immediately felt warmth in his fingers. He raised it and brought it swishing down through the air, producing a stream of red and gold sparks. Oh, bravo! Ollivander cried. Yes, indeed, oh, very good. Well, how curious, how very curious. What's curious? Harry asked. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother, why, its brother gave you that scar. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. Yes, 13.5 inches. Curious indeed how these things happen. The wand chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great. John stepped forward, placing money on the counter. Is there any way to track this wand? Or interfere with it remotely? Ollivander looked startled. The wand creates a bond with its wizard, Mr. Wick. It cannot be tracked by conventional means, magical or otherwise. Unconventional means? There are, theoretical methods. Dark magic primarily. But I assure you, Hogwarts has protections against such intrusions. John didn't look convinced. We'll need a wand holster. Quick release, concealed carry. Ollivander blinked in surprise but produced several options from beneath the counter. These are typically used by Aurors, magical law enforcement. They selected a forearm holster that would allow Harry to deploy his wand with a flick of his wrist. John insisted on testing its release mechanism several times before approving the purchase. Outside Ollivander's, John checked his watch. Books and basic supplies next. Then the tailor. They visited Flourish and Blots for textbooks, plus additional volumes on magical theory and defense that John insisted would provide necessary context. At the apothecary, John examined every ingredient critically, asking pointed questions about toxicity and reactivity. By mid-afternoon, they had acquired most of Harry's school supplies and headed to their final destination. The tailor's shop was located in a side alley, with no sign or display window. Only a small silver needle embossed on the black door marked it as a clothing establishment. John knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. The door opened to reveal an immaculately dressed man with measuring tape draped around his neck. Mr. Wick. Right on schedule. Please, come in. The interior resembled an exclusive London tailor shop more than a wizard's establishment. Rolls of fabric lined the walls, and several mannequins displayed robes and suits of exceptional quality. Winston informed me of your requirements, the tailor said, circling Harry with a professional eye. School robes with certain modifications. John nodded. Standard kit. Level 2. The tailor raised an eyebrow. For a child attending Hogwarts? Perhaps level 1 would be more appropriate. Level 2, John repeated firmly. Plus winter options. Very well. The tailor gestured to a platform. Stand here, young man. As Harry stood being measured, the tailor explained the modifications. The fabric appears standard, but includes protective layers, resistant to minor curses, basic potions, and moderate physical damage. The cut allows for full range of motion and concealed carry options. Concealments? John asked. 6 pockets with extension charms. Undetectable by standard security measures. Harry watched with interest as the tailor worked, creating school robes that looked completely normal but contained hidden features. Additional items were added to their order: gloves with grip enhancement, boots with silencing charms, a winter cloak with thermal regulation. What about casual wear? Harry asked. Do I have to wear robes all the time? Students typically wear uniforms during classes and meals, the tailor explained. Casual wear is permitted during free time and weekends. John nodded. Standard wardrobe package, casual integration. By the time they left the tailor's shop, Harry had a complete Hogwarts wardrobe plus, casual, clothing that incorporated the same protective features. The entire order would be delivered to Winston at the Continental within 3 days. As they walked back toward the leaky cauldron, Harry noticed the stares and whispers had intensified. News of their presence had clearly spread throughout Diagon Alley. A reporter with a large camera tried to approach them, but backed away quickly when John made eye contact. People are afraid of you, Harry observed. People should be cautious around those they don't understand, John corrected. Fear is a natural response to the unknown. But they're wizards. They have magic. Why would they fear someone without magic? John stopped walking, turning to face Harry directly. Magic is a tool, Harry. Like a gun or a knife. Powerful, yes, but still just a tool. What makes someone dangerous isn't their tools, it's their training, their mindset, their will. Harry nodded. It was a lesson John had taught him for years. Commitment beats equipment. Exactly. These wizards rely on their wands for everything. Take those away, and most are helpless. That creates vulnerability. They continued through the crowded street, a bubble of space naturally forming around them as shoppers scrambled to get out of their path. After your parents died, wizards learned that their magic couldn't save them from a bullet they didn't see coming. Couldn't block a knife from a direction they weren't watching. Couldn't stop someone who was willing to sacrifice everything to complete the mission. Is that what you did? Complete the mission? John's expression softened slightly, the closest he came to showing emotion in public. You were my mission, Harry. Keeping you safe. Making sure you had choices your parents didn't. They reached the brick wall that separated Diagon Alley from the leaky cauldron. Harry touched the appropriate brick, and the wall rearranged itself into an archway. Will I still train with you? While I'm at Hogwarts? We'll work out a schedule. Weekends, holidays. Winston says the Continental can arrange secure transportation. John placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. You'll continue physical conditioning daily. I'll provide a program. Harry grinned. Like homework? Exactly like homework. Just as important as your magical studies. They passed through the leaky cauldron, drawing the same fearful stares as before, and emerged onto the Muggle street where their car waited. One more stop, John said as they drove away from London. There's someone you should meet before term starts. 2 hours later, they pulled up to a small cottage surrounded by an overgrown garden. The place looked abandoned, but Harry noticed subtle security measures, motion sensors disguised as garden gnomes, cameras hidden in birdhouses. John knocked on the door in a specific pattern. After a moment, it opened to reveal a shabby-looking man with premature gray in his hair and scars across his face. John, the man said, surprise evident in his voice. It's been years. Remus. John nodded. We need to talk. The man's eyes shifted to Harry, widening in recognition. Is that Harry Potter? Harry introduced himself, extending a hand as John had taught him. Remus Lupin, the man replied automatically, shaking Harry's hand while continuing to stare in amazement. I was a friend of your parents. I never thought, that is, please, come in. The cottage interior was modest but neat. Books filled every available shelf space, and a worn sofa faced a small fireplace. Remus gestured for them to sit. Tea, he offered. No, John replied. This isn't a social call. Harry's received his Hogwarts letter. Remus sat heavily in an armchair. So it's time. You knew where we were? Harry asked. No. John made sure of that. But I knew you were with him, which meant you were safe. Remus looked at John. Though I admit, I had my doubts initially. You weren't the only one, John acknowledged. But Harry needs to understand the situation before he attends Hogwarts. The complete situation. Remus nodded slowly. I assume you've told him about James and Lily? About Voldemort? The basics. Not everything. Such as the betrayal, Remus said darkly. Betrayal? Harry leaned forward. What betrayal? John and Remus exchanged looks. Finally, John nodded. Your parents were betrayed by someone they trusted, Remus explained. Someone who told Voldemort where to find them. A man named Sirius Black. He was supposed to be your godfather, John added. Your father's choice. I was your mother's. Harry tried to process this. So there were two godfathers. An unusual arrangement, but yes. James and Sirius were like brothers, both wizards, both from old magical families. Lily insisted on naming a second godfather, someone from her world. Me. But you're not a wizard, Harry said, confused. John's mouth tightened. I wasn't part of their world, but I wasn't entirely outside it either. The Continental connection gave me access. What John means, Remus interjected, is that he straddled both worlds even then. James trusted him with knowledge about magic long before it was legal to do so. And Lily. He hesitated. Lily knew what John was capable of. Where is Sirius Black now? Harry asked. Azkaban, Remus replied. Wizard prison. After he betrayed your parents, he killed 13 people, 12 muggles and a wizard named Peter Pettigrew. He's been imprisoned ever since. Harry looked at John. Did you try to, complete the mission? John's expression revealed nothing. Black was captured by magical law enforcement before I could reach him. The Continental advised that an assault on Azkaban would violate certain treaties. Even the Baba Yaga has limits, Remus said with a hint of a smile. Harry's mind was racing. So my parents knew they were in danger. They planned for both magical and non-magical protection for me. They were being hunted by the most powerful dark wizard in generations, Remus confirmed. They took every precaution. Except trusting the right people, John said quietly. An awkward silence fell. Finally, Remus cleared his throat. Harry will face challenges at Hogwarts. Not just magical education, but political complications. His name carries weight in our world. The boy who lived, Harry said skeptically. Precisely. There are those who will seek to use you, to influence you for their own agendas. Dumbledore, for all his virtues, has his own plans. And there are darker factions, John added. Families who secretly supported Voldemort but claimed to be under magical control. Malfoy, Remus supplied. Not. Crabbe. Goyle. Their children will likely be in your year at Hogwarts. John produced a small notebook from his jacket and handed it to Harry. Names, backgrounds, known associations. Memorize them. Harry flipped through pages of John's precise handwriting, detailed intelligence on prominent wizarding families, their political alignments, business holdings, and connections to Voldemort's movement. It was the kind of preparation John always insisted on before entering any potentially hostile environment. "There's more," Remus said hesitantly. "About your condition, John." John nodded once. Remus turned to Harry. "I have a medical condition that affects me monthly. Lycanthropy." Harry blinked. "You're a werewolf." "Like, an actual werewolf?" "Yes. It's one reason I live so remotely. The wizarding world doesn't look kindly on my kind." "Is that why you have those scars?" Remus touched his face self-consciously. "Some are self-inflicted during transformation. Others are from less tolerant times. The wizarding world has its own prejudices," John explained. "Blood status. Creature heritage. Political affiliations. You'll need to understand these dynamics without being drawn into them." "I can help with that," Remus offered. "Letters, mainly. And perhaps occasional visits if John permits." "Weekly security checks," John agreed. "And contingency planning for emergencies." They spent the next several hours discussing Hogwarts in detail, the house system, common magical threats, key faculty members, and security vulnerabilities that Harry should be aware of. By the time they left, Harry's head was spinning with information. "He seems nice," Harry said as they drove home. "Why haven't I met him before?" "Security protocol," John replied. "Compartmentalization. The fewer people who knew our location, the safer you were." "But you trust him?" "With certain information, yes. Remus was loyal to your parents. His condition makes him an outsider in the wizarding world, which gives him perspective." Harry watched the countryside pass by the car window. "Everyone I've met today has treated me like I'm someone special. Someone important. To them, you are. You represent something, hope, victory, the destruction of their greatest enemy. But I was just a baby. I didn't actually do anything." John nodded approvingly. "Keep that perspective. Their expectations aren't your responsibility." When they arrived home, Harry went straight to his room, spreading his new school supplies across the bed. Textbooks, potion ingredients, a cauldron, his wand. Tangible proof that magic was real, that he would soon be entering a world he'd never known existed. John appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay?" "Yeah. Just, a lot to process." Harry picked up his wand, feeling the now familiar warmth. "Do you ever wish you had magic?" John considered the question. "Magic is a tool. Like any tool, it has uses. But it creates dependency. The wizards we met today. They were afraid of you even though they have magic and you don't. They have reason to be cautious," John acknowledged. "After your parents died, I made it clear there would be consequences for anyone who threatened you. By killing Death Eaters. By eliminating threats. Permanently." Harry had grown up understanding violence as a reality of the world. John never shielded him from that knowledge, but never glorified it either. "Will I be safe at Hogwarts?" "Really safe?" "Hogwarts has powerful magical protections," John said. "But you'll have additional security measures." He opened a drawer in Harry's desk and placed a small metal case inside. "This contains emergency equipment. Memorize its contents tonight." Harry nodded. John turned to leave, then paused. "Your mother wanted you to attend Hogwarts. To learn magic, to understand that part of yourself. But she also wanted you to have choices. What would she think of how you raised me?" Harry asked quietly. John actually smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed his normally impassive face. "Lily would have approved of your training. She was practical about threats. James would have complained about the lack of Quidditch. Quidditch. Wizard sport. Played on flying broomsticks. Your father was apparently very good. Harry grinned. Flying broomsticks are real too. So I'm told. You'll have lessons at Hogwarts. After John left, Harry opened the metal case. Inside he found a custom-designed satellite phone, a ceramic knife with a finger-molded grip, lock-picking tools disguised as a student's quill set, a medical kit with both standard and specialized contents, and several other items whose purpose wasn't immediately obvious. This was John's way. Preparation. Contingency planning. Ensuring Harry always had options. The next morning, John increased Harry's training schedule. Physical conditioning, weapons practice, and tactical scenarios now incorporated magical elements based on what they'd learned. Wizards rely on line of sight for most offensive spells, John explained as they ran through combat drills. Use cover. Create distractions. Force them to divide their attention. Harry ducked behind a training barrier, then rolled to a new position before firing his rubber training knife at the target. Good, John approved. Now assume the target can make objects fly toward you. They adapted John's existing training protocols to account for magical capabilities. Harry learned to anticipate spells based on wand movements, to recognize potion ingredients that could be weaponized, to identify magical creatures by their tracks and signs. As August progressed, more information arrived via Winston and the Continental. Floor plans of Hogwarts Castle, though John noted they were likely incomplete. Detailed profiles of faculty members, including combat assessments. Security protocols for the magical transportation systems Harry might need to use. A week before September 1st, they received a visitor. The wards around their property triggered a silent alarm, showing a single figure approaching the front gate. John positioned Harry in a pre-designated safe room before checking the security monitors. It's Dumbledore, he informed Harry through the intercom. Alone. Harry joined John at the front door as the elderly wizard approached. Despite the rural setting, Dumbledore still wore flowing robes, midnight blue with silver moons. Good afternoon, he called cheerfully. I hope you don't mind my unannounced visit. I wish to discuss a few details before term begins. John's expression remained neutral, but Harry could sense his tension. Come in. They sat in the living room, a space designed for both comfort and tactical advantage. Multiple exits, reinforced walls, and furniture positioned to provide cover if needed. Dumbledore seemed oblivious to these features as he beamed at Harry. I trust your shopping expedition was successful. Got all your school supplies? Harry nodded. Yes, sir. Excellent, excellent. I've come to discuss transportation arrangements. Typically, first years board the Hogwarts Express from King's Cross Station in London. Platform 9 3/4. John raised an eyebrow. Platform 9 3/4. Accessible through a magical barrier between platforms 9 and 10, Dumbledore explained. Quite ingenious, really. Hundreds of students and their families pass through unnoticed by Muggles every year. Public exposure in a crowded station, John noted. Multiple security vulnerabilities. I assure you, Mr. Wick, the platform has been safely used for centuries. We'll make our own arrangements, John said firmly. Winston has offered Continental transportation services. Dumbledore's smile faltered slightly. I see. While I understand your concerns, I feel I should mention that the journey on the Hogwarts Express is something of a tradition. It provides new students an opportunity to meet their classmates before arrival. Harry can meet his classmates at school. Harry glanced between the two men. Maybe I could try the train. With proper precautions. John considered this. You want to go? I'd like to see it. Experience it. Harry had been studying wizard culture through the books they'd purchased. It sounds important. John nodded once. We'll discuss options. He turned back to Dumbledore. Was there anything else? Just a few administrative matters. Dumbledore produced several forms from his robes. Permission for Hogsmeade visits in 3rd year and above, medical authorization, emergency contacts. John reviewed each document carefully before signing. Harry has a satellite phone for emergencies. He'll check in regularly. I'm afraid electronic devices don't function at Hogwarts, Dumbledore said apologetically. Too much ambient magic interferes with the technology. This one will work, John stated with certainty. Continental modification. Dumbledore looked intrigued but didn't press the issue. One last thing, given Harry's unique status in our world, there may be considerable attention focused on him initially. I've instructed the staff to treat him as normally as possible, but I'm famous for something I don't even remember, Harry finished. Precisely. Dumbledore's blue eyes studied Harry thoughtfully. I must say, you seem remarkably well-adjusted considering the circumstances. John made sure I understood the difference between what people think they know and what's actually true. A valuable lesson indeed, Dumbledore agreed. Well, I shan't take up any more of your time. I look forward to seeing you at the start of term feast, Harry. After Dumbledore left, John ran a complete security sweep of the property before rejoining Harry in the living room. Your thoughts? John asked. Harry considered. He wants me to have the full Hogwarts experience. Traditions and all that. And you want that too? Parts of it, Harry admitted. I want to understand where my parents came from, what shaped them. John nodded. The train isn't ideal from a security perspective, but it's manageable with proper preparation. I'll contact Winston. The final days before September 1st passed quickly. Harry memorized the contents of John's notebook, studied the Hogwarts floor plans, and continued his enhanced training regimen. The modified school robes arrived from the tailor, along with casual clothing that concealed various equipment while appearing completely normal. The night before Harry's departure, he found John in the weapons room, methodically cleaning a collection of knives. All packed? John asked without looking up. Almost. Harry sat on a nearby stool. You'll be okay here alone. John's hands paused briefly. I managed before you came along. His tone was dry, but Harry caught the hint of emotion underneath. I'll call every night. The secure line. Between 7 and 7:30, John confirmed. Emergency protocols if you miss 2 consecutive check-ins. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, John continuing his meticulous work. I'm nervous, Harry admitted finally. You'd be foolish not to be. New environment, unknown variables, multiple potential threats. Not helping. John set down the knife he was working on. You're prepared, Harry. More prepared than any first year has ever been. Not just the combat training, but the mindset. You know how to assess situations, how to adapt, how to survive. What if I'm not good at magic? Then you'll work at it until you are. Like everything else. John picked up another knife, checking its edge. Your mother wasn't from a magical family. She learned through determination and intelligence. You have both. Harry nodded, feeling somewhat reassured. Thanks. For everything. John looked up, meeting Harry's eyes directly. You're welcome. On the morning of September 1st, they drove to King's Cross Station in London, arriving 90 minutes before the Hogwarts Express was scheduled to depart. John had Harry's trunk in one hand and was scanning the crowd with practiced efficiency. Platform barrier is this way, he said, leading Harry between platforms 9 and 10. They observed several families disappearing through what appeared to be a solid brick wall. John studied the process carefully before turning to Harry. Security on the other side? Unknown, Harry replied automatically. Assume standard wizarding protocols with emphasis on anti-Muggle measures rather than actual threats. John nodded approvingly. Extraction plan. Continental contact at Hogsmeade Station. Emergency port key if required. Satellite phone as backup. Good. John placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Ready? Harry took a deep breath and nodded. Together, they walked straight at the barrier. Instead of crashing, they passed through onto a hidden platform where a scarlet steam engine waited. Families crowded the platform, parents saying goodbye to children, students reuniting with friends. The crowd nearest them fell silent as they noticed the new arrivals. Whispers spread rapidly. It's Harry Potter. With the Muggle boogeyman. My dad says he killed 15 Death Eaters with his bare hands. Don't make eye contact, whatever you do. John ignored the whispers, guiding Harry toward the train. Remember your training. Trust your instincts. Call if you need extraction. I will. Harry hesitated, then hugged John quickly. John stiffened momentarily, then returned the embrace. Be careful, Harry. You too. Harry boarded the train, found an empty compartment, and stored his trunk. He watched through the window as John remained on the platform, still vigilantly scanning the area. Other parents gave him a wide berth, some hurriedly ushering their children onto the train when they noticed his presence. As the train began to move, John raised a hand in farewell. Harry waved back, watching until his godfather disappeared from view. Then he settled back in his seat, mentally preparing for whatever challenges Hogwarts might bring. He was Harry Potter, godson of John Wick. The boy who lived and the protege of the Baba Yaga. Both magical and Muggle, with a foot in two worlds. And he was ready. Chapter 2, Consequences. The Hogwarts Express rattled north, countryside blurring past the windows. Harry sat alone in his compartment, mentally cataloging everything around him. Exits, defensive positions, potential weapons. John's training was second nature now. The door slid open. A freckled, red-haired boy stood hesitantly in the doorway. Mind if I sit here? He asked. Everywhere else is full. Harry assessed the newcomer. Gangly, hand-me-down clothes, no visible threat. Sure. The boy sat opposite Harry. I'm Ron. Ron Weasley. Harry Potter. Ron's eyes widened, immediately darting to Harry's forehead. So it's true. Do you really have the, you know? He pointed vaguely. Harry pushed his hair back, revealing the lightning scar. Wicked, Ron breathed. And is it true about your godfather? What about him? Harry's voice cooled noticeably. Ron swallowed. My dad works at the ministry. He says your godfather is the Baba Yaga. The one who hunted down you-know-whose followers after your parents. He trailed off awkwardly. After they were murdered. Yes, that's John. Blimey. Ron looked both terrified and impressed. Dad says the Death Eaters are still scared to say his name. Says he killed 14 of them in 3 days without using any magic at all. Harry shrugged. They were threats. John eliminated them. The compartment door slid open again. A round-faced boy peered in nervously. Sorry, he mumbled, but have you seen a toad? Trevor keeps getting away from me. No toads here, Harry replied. The boy looked dejected. He keeps running off. Gran's going to kill me. What's your name? Harry asked. Neville. Neville Longbottom. Harry recalled the name from John's notebook. The Longbottoms had opposed Voldemort, and Neville's parents had been tortured into insanity by Death Eaters shortly after the Potters were murdered. We'll help you look, Harry decided, standing up. I'm Harry Potter. This is Ron Weasley. Neville's mouth dropped open. Harry Potter? Really? Let's find your toad, Harry said, ignoring the reaction. He turned to Ron. You check that way, I'll go this way. Neville, stay in the middle and we'll funnel him toward you. Both boys looked startled by Harry's commanding tone but nodded. They spread out through the corridor, checking compartments systematically. Harry moved with quiet efficiency, quickly clearing each section of the train. He found several interesting conversations but no toads. In one compartment, a bushy-haired girl was lecturing a group of bewildered students about Hogwarts history. Harry paused to listen. Founded over 1,000 years ago by Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin. I've memorized all our course books, of course. I just hope it's enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way, who are you? She said this all very fast. The students looked relieved when they noticed Harry in the doorway. I'm looking for a toad. Neville's lost one, Harry said. Hermione stood up. I'll help. I've already practiced some simple finding spells, though I haven't actually tried them yet. She studied Harry's face. You're Harry Potter. It wasn't a question. Harry nodded. I've read all about you, of course. You're in modern magical history, the rise and fall of the dark arts, and great wizarding events of the 20th century. None of those books got it right, Harry said flatly. Hermione looked taken aback. But they're published texts. Published doesn't mean accurate. Harry turned to continue the search. Coming. Hermione followed him, still frowning. What do you mean they didn't get it right? They don't know what really happened. Nobody does. I was a baby. But what about, let's find the toad, Harry said firmly. They continued the search, eventually locating Trevor in the prefect's carriage. Neville nearly wept with relief when Harry handed over the squat amphibian. Thanks, he said earnestly. Really? Keep better track of him, Harry advised. A pet is a responsibility. When they returned to Harry's compartment, Ron had already settled back in. Hermione followed them inside, apparently unwilling to end the conversation. You didn't answer my question, she persisted. If the books are wrong about you, what's the truth? Harry considered the girl. She was direct, inquisitive, and clearly intelligent. The truth is nobody protected my parents well enough. After they died, my godfather made sure the same wouldn't happen to me. You mean the Muggle assassin, Hermione said. I read about him too. The ministry records are sealed, but there are rumors, not rumors, Harry cut in. And John's not just an assassin. He's my family. An awkward silence fell. Ron and Neville looked uncomfortable, but Hermione seemed fascinated. How does a Muggle fight wizards? We have magic, they don't. Harry smiled slightly. That's why it works. The conversation shifted to safer topics as the journey continued. Ron explained Quidditch, Neville talked about his formidable grandmother, and Hermione recited facts about Hogwarts. Harry listened more than he spoke, gathering information about his new classmates. Their discussion was interrupted when the compartment door slid open again. 3 boys entered, a pale, pointed-faced blonde flanked by 2 larger boys with mean, dull expressions. They're saying Harry Potter's in this compartment, the blonde said, studying Harry with interest. Is it you? Yes, Harry replied, already categorizing the trio. The blonde was clearly the leader, confident stance, expensive clothes, practiced sneer. The other 2 were muscle, no initiative, just following orders. This is Crabbe and Goyle, the boy said casually. And I'm Malfoy. Draco Malfoy. Ron coughed, poorly disguising a snigger. Draco glared at him. Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. Red hair, frayed clothes, you must be a Weasley. He turned back to Harry. You'll soon find that some wizarding families are better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He extended his hand, but Harry didn't take it. The Malfoys, Harry said instead. Your father Lucius claimed to be under the Imperius curse when Voldemort fell. Everyone except Hermione flinched at the name. Draco's pale cheeks flushed pink. Careful, Potter. My father is either a liar or weak-minded, Harry finished. Neither is impressive. Draco's face contorted with fury. You'll regret that. Your Muggle godfather won't always be around to protect you. Harry smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. Threatening me isn't smart, Malfoy. Crabbe and Goyle stepped forward menacingly. Harry didn't move, but his posture shifted subtly, weight balanced, hands relaxed but ready. John had taught him how to handle multiple opponents since he was 7. Got a problem here? A new voice intervened. An older red-haired boy wearing a prefect badge stood in the doorway. Just leaving, Draco muttered. We'll talk later, Potter. After they left, Ron grinned. That was brilliant. Nobody stands up to Malfoy like that. His father was a Death Eater, Harry said simply. One who bought his way out of prison. The prefect, Ron's older brother Percy, frowned. You shouldn't make accusations like that, Potter. The Malfoy family is very influential. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. Harry turned to look out the window. We're slowing down. Must be getting close. The first years were greeted at Hogsmeade Station by an enormous man named Hagrid, who led them to a fleet of small boats. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville shared one, gliding across the black lake toward the castle that loomed against the night sky. Hogwarts was magnificent, ancient stone towers and turrets, windows blazing with golden light. Harry automatically assessed the structure from a tactical perspective, noting potential access points and defensive positions. But even through that lens, he couldn't help feeling awed. My parents met here, he murmured. Your mum and dad were brilliant wizards, Hagrid called from the lead boat. Head boy and girl in their day. The boats docked in an underground harbor, and Hagrid led them up to the castle's massive oak front doors. He knocked 3 times, and the doors swung open to reveal a tall, black-haired witch in emerald green robes. The Furs years, Professor McGonagall, said Hagrid. Thank you, Hagrid. Her gaze swept over the students, lingering briefly on Harry. Follow me. She led them through the entrance hall, a space so vast Harry could have fit his entire home inside it, and into a small chamber off the Great Hall. There, she explained the sorting ceremony and house system before leaving them to wait. How do they sort us? Harry asked Ron. Some kind of test, I think. Fred said it hurts a lot, but I think he was joking. Several students looked terrified at this possibility. Harry remained calm. Tests he could handle. Suddenly, gasps erupted around them as pearly white, transparent figures glided through the walls, the Hogwarts ghosts. They argued among themselves, barely noticing the first years until Professor McGonagall returned to escort them into the Great Hall. The enormous room was lit by thousands of floating candles, with 4 long tables where older students sat beneath banners of their house colors. At the front, another table seated the teachers. Above it all, the ceiling appeared to open directly to the night sky. It's bewitched to look like the sky outside, Hermione whispered. I read about it in Hogwarts, a history. Professor McGonagall placed a 4-legged stool in front of the first years, then set an extremely old, patched wizard's hat upon it. To Harry's surprise, the hat twitched, a rip near its brim opening wide like a mouth, and began to sing about the 4 Hogwarts houses. When it finished, McGonagall began calling students forward alphabetically. The sorting seemed simple: you put on the hat, it shouted out your house, and you joined the appropriate table. Harry watched carefully as Granger, Hermione, became a Gryffindor, and Malfoy, Draco, was immediately declared Slytherin. Neville also went to Gryffindor after a surprisingly long deliberation. Potter, Harry. Whispers suddenly broke out across the hall. Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter. Every eye followed Harry as he walked forward and put on the hat. It dropped over his eyes, and a small voice spoke in his ear. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh yes, and a nice thirst to prove yourself. But such caution, such control. Where to put you? Harry gripped the edges of the stool. He'd researched the houses extensively, knew the stereotypes and reputations. Interesting, murmured the Hat. You've been trained by the Baba Yaga himself. Such discipline. Such focus. Slytherin would help you achieve greatness, no doubt about that. Not Slytherin, Harry thought firmly. Not Slytherin, eh? Are you sure? You could be great, you know, it's all here in your head. No. Well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor. The Gryffindor table erupted with cheers. Harry removed the hat and walked toward them, aware of the stares following him. He sat beside Neville, across from Hermione, and watched the rest of the sorting. After Zabini, Blaise, became a Slytherin, Albus Dumbledore rose to his feet. He beamed at the students, arms opened wide in welcome. Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words. And here they are, Nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Thank you. Food appeared on the golden plates, more varieties than Harry had ever seen. He selected items carefully, following John's rule, always know what you're eating. That does look good, said the ghost sitting next to Ron wistfully. Can't you? Harry began. Haven't eaten for nearly 500 years, the ghost replied. Don't need to, of course, but one does miss it. I don't think I've introduced myself. Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington at your service. Resident ghost of Gryffindor Tower. I know who you are, said Ron suddenly. My brothers told me about you, you're nearly headless Nick. I would prefer you to call me Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, nearly headless. How can you be nearly headless? Seamus Finnegan interrupted. Sir Nicholas looked extremely annoyed. Like this. He seized his left ear and pulled. His whole head swung off his neck and fell onto his shoulder, revealing that someone had obviously tried to behead him but not done it properly. Looking pleased at their stunned faces, nearly headless Nick flipped his head back onto his neck and continued, So, new Gryffindors. I hope you're going to help us win the house championship this year. Gryffindor has never gone so long without winning. Slytherin has got the cup 6 years in a row. Blood status prejudice in action, Harry commented, drawing surprised looks. What do you mean? Hermione asked. Slytherin favors purebloods. Professor Snape, Harry nodded toward the teacher's table where a hook-nosed man with greasy black hair sat, is their head of house and consistently shows bias in their favor. Same prejudice that fueled Voldemort's movement. Several students gasped at the name. Even nearly headless Nick looked shocked. How do you know about Professor Snape? Percy demanded. Harry took a bite of potato. Research. Know your environment before entering it. The first years stared at him. Even the older students nearby seemed unsettled. You talk like you're preparing for war, Seamus said with a nervous laugh. Harry didn't laugh. Aren't we? Voldemort's followers are still out there. Some in Azkaban. Some walking free. An uncomfortable silence fell over their section of the table. Harry continued eating calmly, mentally noting which students seemed most disturbed by his comments, useful information for future interactions. The remainder of the feast passed with lighter conversation. When the desserts disappeared, Dumbledore stood again to deliver start-of-term notices, including a warning that the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side was off-limits to anyone who didn't want to die a very painful death. Harry immediately filed this information away. Potential threat or security test. He'd investigate later. After singing the school song, each student to their own tune, creating a chaotic cacophony that John would have hated, they were dismissed to their dormitories. Percy led the Gryffindor first years through the castle, up staircases that moved unexpectedly, past talking portraits and hidden doorways. Password, asked a portrait of a fat lady in a pink silk dress when they reached Gryffindor Tower. Caput Draconis, said Percy, and the portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They scrambled through it into the Gryffindor common room, a cozy, circular room full of squashy armchairs. Percy directed the girls through one door to their dormitory and the boys through another. Harry followed Ron, Neville, Seamus, and Dean Thomas up the spiral staircase to their circular bedroom with 5 four-poster beds. Harry's trunk sat at the foot of one bed. He opened it, removed his satellite phone, and checked for signal. 2 bars, enough for a call. He'd promised to check in between 7 and 7:30. "What's that?" Dean asked, pointing at the device. "Phone," Harry replied, stepping toward the window for better reception. "But electronics don't work at Hogwarts," Hermione said from the doorway. "Too much magical interference." "It says so in Hogwarts, a history." "I know." Harry pressed the speed dial. "This one's special." The others watched in fascination as Harry spoke into the device. "It's me." "Yes, arrived safely. Sorted into Gryffindor." He paused, listening. "No threats yet. Basic security assessment completed. Castle layout matches intelligence approximately 70%. Another pause. "Yes, I have the kit. Standard check-in tomorrow." He ended the call and returned the phone to a hidden compartment in his trunk. "Was that your godfather?" Ron asked, eyes wide. Harry nodded, beginning to unpack methodically. "How does that work here?" Hermione persisted. "It should be impossible." "Continental modification," Harry said, repeating John's explanation to Dumbledore. "The Continental?" Seamus frowned. "My uncle mentioned that once. Said it was somewhere no sane wizard would go without invitation." Harry continued unpacking in silence. The other boys exchanged glances but didn't press further. That night, lying in his 4-poster bed, Harry listened to the breathing of his dorm mates. All asleep now, their various snores and sighs creating a symphony of vulnerability. John had trained him to sleep lightly, to wake at the slightest unusual sound. The castle creaked and settled around them, magic humming through its ancient stones. Despite his alertness, Harry felt oddly at peace. His parents had slept in this tower, walked these halls, learned magic in these classrooms. And now he would too. Classes began the next morning. Harry rose early, completed the physical conditioning routine John had prescribed, showered, and dressed before his dorm mates had even stirred. By the time they reached the Great Hall for breakfast, he had already eaten and memorized his schedule. Finding classrooms proved challenging even for Harry, who had studied the castle layout. Hogwarts seemed designed to confuse, staircases that changed direction, doors that weren't really doors, walls pretending to be doors, and a poltergeist named Peeves who delighted in misdirecting first years. Harry adapted quickly, mapping alternate routes between locations and identifying landmarks. By their 3rd day, other Gryffindor first years had taken to following him. "How do you always know the way?" Ron asked as Harry led them directly to the Transfiguration classroom through a shortcut behind a tapestry. "Systematic exploration," Harry replied. "I wake up early." What he didn't mention was that he'd been conducting pre-dawn reconnaissance missions, mapping the castle section by section. John had emphasized the importance of knowing all exits and defensive positions in any new environment. Transfiguration with Professor McGonagall proved challenging. After transforming her desk into a pig and back again, she had them attempt to turn matches into needles. By the end of the lesson, only Hermione had made any difference to her match. Harry's had gone silver but remained wooden. "Visualize the molecular structure changing," Hermione advised him afterward. "That's what helped me." Harry nodded thoughtfully. "Thanks. I'll try that approach." Despite his initial difficulty with transfiguration, Harry excelled in defense against the dark arts, much to Professor Quirrell's surprise. The stuttering teacher had barely begun explaining basic defensive theory when Harry demonstrated perfect form. Mr. P. Potter, Quirrell stammered. Where did you learn that stance? My godfather, Harry replied simply. Whispers rippled through the classroom. Everyone had heard stories about the Baba Yaga by now. Potions proved challenging in an entirely different way. Held in the dungeons with the Slytherins, the class was taught by Professor Snape, who seemed to despise Harry on sight. Ah, yes, he said softly during roll call. Harry Potter. Our new celebrity. Draco Malfoy and his friends Crabbe and Goyle sniggered behind their hands. Snape finished calling the names and looked up at the class. You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making. He spoke in barely more than a whisper, but they caught every word. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stopper death, if you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach. Silence followed this little speech. Harry maintained eye contact with Snape, his expression neutral. John had taught him to reveal nothing to potential hostiles. Potter, said Snape suddenly. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Hermione's hand shot into the air, but Harry replied calmly, Draught of living death, sir. A powerful sleeping potion. Snape's lip curled. Lucky guess. Let's try again. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? The stomach of a goat, sir. It protects against most poisons. What is the difference, Potter, between monkshood and wolfsbane? No difference, sir. They're the same plant, also called aconite. Snape stared at Harry, black eyes glittering. And how exactly does a boy raised by a Muggle assassin know such things? I read all the textbooks before term started, Harry said evenly. And my godfather taught me about poisons and antidotes years ago. Practical knowledge. Whispers erupted around the classroom. Snape silenced them with a glare. 1 point to Gryffindor for your preparation, Potter, he said reluctantly. And 1 point from Gryffindor for your cheek. The rest of the lesson consisted of brewing a simple potion to cure boils. Harry worked methodically, treating the process like the chemistry experiments John had taught him. His potion wasn't perfect, but it was close, second only to Hermione's. Snape swept past Harry's cauldron without comment, which seemed to be the highest praise he offered Gryffindors. After class, Draco cornered Harry in the corridor. Think you're clever, don't you, Potter? Showing off for Snape. I was answering questions, Harry replied, assessing the situation. Malfoy had positioned Crabbe and Goyle to block retreat in both directions. Predictable. My father says your godfather's days are numbered. The Ministry won't tolerate a Muggle interfering in our world forever. Harry smiled thinly. Your father should be careful what he wishes for. Is that a threat? Draco demanded, color rising in his pale cheeks. It's advice. Free of charge. Crabbe and Goyle moved closer, cracking their knuckles menacingly. Harry shifted his stance slightly, preparing for their predictable attack. What's happening here? Percy Weasley's voice cut through the tension. The prefect appeared from around the corner, frowning at the group. Just a friendly chat, Draco said, backing away. See you around, Potter. As the Slytherins departed, Percy gave Harry an assessing look. You should be more careful about making enemies, Potter. Especially that family. I didn't make them enemies, Harry replied. Their choices did that long before I was born. After the first week of classes, Harry had established a routine. Early morning physical training, classes, homework in the library, check-in call with John, then exploration of the castle until curfew. He observed his classmates, noting alliances and conflicts, mapping the social dynamics as carefully as the physical layout. Ron became a constant companion, impressed by Harry's confidence and direct approach. Hermione initially kept her distance, disapproving of Harry's occasional rule-bending during his explorations, but her curiosity about his background eventually overcame her reservations. "Is it true your godfather has killed more than 20 people?" she asked one evening in the common room. Harry looked up from his potions essay. "Probably more. I never asked for an exact count." Hermione looked horrified. "And that doesn't bother you?" "John only eliminates threats," Harry explained. "He follows a code." "What kind of code justifies killing?" Harry considered how to explain the Continental's rules, the structure of John's world. "There are consequences for actions. Break the rules, face the consequences. It's actually simpler than the wizarding world's justice system." "That's not justice, that's revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing." Harry returned to his essay, effectively ending the conversation. Despite moments of tension, Hermione gradually became part of Harry's small circle, her intelligence and thoroughness complementing his tactical approach to problems. She helped with magical theory while he shared practical applications John had taught him. Flying lessons introduced a new dynamic. Held with the Slytherins, the first session started badly when Neville lost control of his broom, fell, and broke his wrist. After Madame Hooch took him to the hospital wing, Draco found Neville's Remembrall on the ground. "Look what Longbottom dropped," he said, holding up the glass ball. "Maybe if he'd given this a squeeze, he'd have remembered to fall on his fat backside." "Give it here, Malfoy," said Harry quietly. Everyone stopped talking to watch. Draco smiled nastily. "I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find. How about up a tree?" "I won't ask twice." Harry's voice remained conversational, but something in his expression made several students step back. Draco hesitated, then apparently decided to save face by mounting his broomstick and taking off. "Come and get it, Potter." Harry grabbed a broom. "No!" Hermione shouted. "Madame Hooch told us not to move. You'll get us all in trouble." Harry ignored her, mounting the broom and kicking off from the ground. Air rushed through his hair as he soared upward, exhilaration filling him. This was easy, this was wonderful. He could do anything on a broomstick, it felt as natural as breathing. He turned his broomstick sharply to face Malfoy in midair. Draco looked stunned. "Give it here," Harry called, "or I'll knock you off that broom." "Oh, yeah." Draco tried to sneer, but looked worried. Harry leaned forward and shot toward Malfoy like a javelin. Draco barely got out of the way in time. Harry made a sharp about-face and held the broom steady. "No Crab and Goyle up here to save you, Malfoy." The same thought seemed to have occurred to Draco. "Catch it if you can, then." He threw the glass ball high into the air and streaked back toward the ground. Harry tracked the ball's trajectory, calculating speed and wind resistance as John had taught him. He leaned forward, pointing his broom handle down, and the next moment he was gathering speed in a steep dive, racing the ball. Wind whistled in his ears, mingling with screams from the ground. He stretched out his hand, a foot from the ground he caught it, just in time to pull his broom straight, and he toppled gently onto the grass with the Remembrall clutched safely in his fist. Harry Potter. Professor McGonagall was running toward them. Harry got to his feet, calculated his options, and decided compliance was the best approach. Never, in all my time at Hogwarts, Professor McGonagall was almost speechless with shock, and her glasses flashed furiously. "How dare you, might have broken your neck, it wasn't his fault, Professor, be quiet, Miss Patil, but Malfoy, that's enough, Mr. Weasley." McGonagall turned to Harry. "Potter, follow me. Now." Harry handed the Remembrall to Ron. "Make sure Neville gets this back." He followed McGonagall back into the castle, up the marble staircase, and through corridors until she stopped outside a classroom. She opened the door and poked her head inside. "Excuse me, Professor Flitwick, could I borrow Wood for a moment?" Wood turned out to be a burly fifth-year boy who looked confused until McGonagall explained that she'd found him a seeker. "Ever seen a game of Quidditch, Potter?" Wood asked excitedly after McGonagall left them to discuss details. "Only in books," Harry admitted. My godfather isn't exactly a sports fan. Wood's enthusiasm dimmed slightly at the mention of Harry's godfather. Right. Well, you're a natural on a broom. McGonagall says you caught that thing in a 50-foot dive without scratching yourself. Charlie Weasley couldn't have done it, and he could have played for England. The news that Harry had been made seeker for the Gryffindor Quidditch team, the youngest in a century, spread through the school like wildfire. That evening, Fred and George Weasley, the team's beaters and Ron's older twin brothers, cornered Harry in the common room. Well done, said George in a low voice. Wood told us. We're on the team too, beaters. I tell you, we're going to win that Quidditch Cup for sure this year, said Fred. We haven't won since Charlie left, but this year's team is going to be brilliant. Are you related to the Weasleys? George asked suddenly. The ones who work with the Continental. Harry raised an eyebrow. Don't know. John never mentioned them. The twins exchanged glances. Our uncles Gideon and Fabian, Fred explained. They were part of the Order of the Phoenix during the war. Rumor has it they had connections to both worlds. Order of the Phoenix? Harry asked. Dumbledore's resistance group, George said in a hushed voice. Fought against you-know-who. Our parents were members too. Harry filed this information away to verify with John later. The Continental's connection to the wizarding world apparently ran deeper than he'd realized. The following morning, Harry received a package at breakfast, a Nimbus 2000 broomstick from Professor McGonagall. As he unwrapped it, Malfoy appeared with Crabbe and Goyle. That's a broomstick, Malfoy said with a mixture of jealousy and spite. First years aren't allowed. You'll be in trouble now, Potter. Ron couldn't resist. It's not just any broomstick, Malfoy, it's a Nimbus 2000. What did you say you've got at home? A Comet 260? He grinned at Harry. Comets look flashy, but they're not in the same league as the Nimbus. What would you know about it, Weasley? You couldn't afford half the handle, Malfoy snapped. I suppose Potter here got special treatment again. Having a notorious godfather has its advantages, doesn't it? Before Harry could answer, Professor Flitwick appeared at Malfoy's elbow. Not arguing, I hope, boys. Potter's been sent a broomstick, Professor, said Malfoy quickly. Yes, that's right, said Professor Flitwick, beaming at Harry. Professor McGonagall told me all about the special circumstances. What model is it, Potter? A Nimbus 2000, sir, said Harry, fighting not to laugh at the look of horror on Malfoy's face. That night during his check-in call, Harry told John about making the Quidditch team. Flying on broomsticks, John's voice came through the satellite phone, sounding remarkably unsurprised. Your father was apparently very good at this game. Did you know about the Order of the Phoenix? Fred and George Weasley mentioned it. A pause. Yes. Your parents were members. Dumbledore's group against Voldemort. Why didn't you tell me? Need to know basis, John replied. Now you need to know. Were you involved with them? Another pause. Peripherally. The Continental maintained neutrality officially, but provided certain services. Intelligence. Secure locations. Communications. For a price. Always for a price. Nothing is free, Harry. The Weasley twins mentioned their uncles worked with the Continental. Gideon and Fabian Pruitt, John confirmed. Good men. Killed by Death Eaters toward the end of the war. Harry added this information to his mental file on the Weasley family. Anything else I should know about my parents' involvement? Your father joined straight out of Hogwarts. Your mother was recruited for her charm work, specialized protection spells. They went into hiding after a prophecy was made about you. A prophecy? What did it say? That information remains classified, John said, his tone indicating the subject was closed. Focus on your training and studies. Keep your guard up around Malfoy and his associates. Always, Harry promised. As the weeks passed, Harry settled into life at Hogwarts. Quidditch practice 3 times a week would added another dimension to his schedule, but he welcomed the physical challenge. The conditioning John had insisted on for years made Harry's training easier than it might have been otherwise. His reputation among the students evolved in interesting ways. Some feared him because of his connection to John. Others sought his friendship for the same reason. The Slytherins generally kept their distance, though Malfoy continued his verbal jabs whenever teachers weren't present. On Halloween morning, the castle awoke to the delicious smell of baking pumpkin. Even better for Harry, Professor Flitwick announced in charms that they were ready to start making objects fly, something they'd all been eager to try since watching him make Neville's toad zoom around the classroom. Flitwick paired them up, putting Harry with Seamus Finnegan. Ron was partnered with Hermione, which pleased neither of them. Hermione had become friendlier with Harry but still irritated Ron with her bossy know-it-all attitude. "Now, don't forget that nice wrist movement we've been practicing," squeaked Professor Flitwick. "Swish and flick, remember, swish and flick. And saying the magic words properly is very important, too." Harry concentrated on the feather in front of him, remembering Hermione's advice about visualization. Wingardium Leviosa. The feather twitched but didn't rise. Next to him, Seamus grew impatient and prodded his feather with his wand, setting it on fire. Harry efficiently smothered the flames with his textbook. Across the aisle, Hermione successfully levitated her feather to much praise from Professor Flitwick. Ron slouched in his seat, looking thoroughly disgruntled. After class, Ron vented his frustration. "It's no wonder no one can stand her. She's a nightmare, honestly." Hermione rushed past them, tears in her eyes. "I think she heard you," Harry observed. "So?" Ron looked uncomfortable but defensive. "She must have noticed she's got no friends." Harry frowned. "That's not true. And even if it were, saying it doesn't help anything." Hermione didn't appear for their next class, nor was she seen all afternoon. On their way to the Halloween feast, Harry and Ron overheard Parvati Patil telling her friend Lavender that Hermione was crying in the girls' bathroom and wanted to be left alone. Ron looked still more awkward at this, but the entrance of the Halloween decorations in the Great Hall quickly distracted him. 1,000 live bats fluttered from the walls and ceiling while 1,000 more swooped over the tables in low black clouds. The feast appeared on golden plates, just as it had at the start of term banquet. Harry was just helping himself to a baked potato when Professor Quirrell came sprinting into the hall, his turban askew and terror on his face. Everyone stared as he reached Professor Dumbledore's chair, slumped against the table, and gasped, "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He then sank to the floor in a dead faint. The hall erupted in chaos until Dumbledore set off purple firecrackers from his wand to restore silence. "Prefects, lead your houses back to the dormitories immediately." Percy instantly took charge, ordering the Gryffindors to follow him. As they jostled their way through the crowd, Harry grabbed Ron's arm. "Hermione. She doesn't know about the troll." Ron bit his lip, guilt written across his face. "Oh, all right. But Percy'd better not see us." They slipped away from the Gryffindors heading upstairs and joined the Hufflepuffs going the other way, then slipped down a deserted side corridor toward the girls' bathroom. They had just turned the corner when they heard quick footsteps behind them. "Percy," hissed Ron, pulling Harry behind a large stone griffin. But when they peeked around it, they saw not Percy but Snape. He crossed the corridor and disappeared from view. "What's he doing?" Harry whispered. "Why isn't he down in the dungeons with the rest of the teachers?" "No idea." Harry watched Snape's direction carefully. "He's heading for the 3rd floor." They crept along the next corridor after Snape's fading footsteps, but before they could figure out where he was going, a horrible smell reached their nostrils, a mixture of old socks and public toilet. And then they heard it, a low grunting and the shuffling footfalls of gigantic feet. At the end of a passage to the left, a 12-foot mountain troll was lumbering toward a doorway. It slouched inside a room. "The key's in the lock," Harry muttered. "We could lock it in." "Good idea," said Ron nervously. They edged toward the open door, Harry's training kicking in as he assessed the threat. Just as they were about to slam the door shut, they heard something that made their hearts stop, a high, petrified scream coming from inside the chamber. "Hermione," they said together. Without hesitation, Harry kicked the door fully open and charged in, Ron at his heels. Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she was about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking sinks off the walls as it went. "Confuse it!" Harry shouted, grabbing a tap and throwing it against the wall. The troll stopped a few feet from Hermione, turning its lumpy head to see what had made the noise. It spotted Harry and hesitated, then made for him instead, lifting its massive club. "Hey, P-Brain!" yelled Ron from the other side of the chamber, throwing a metal pipe at it. The troll didn't seem to notice the pipe hitting its shoulder, but it heard the yell and paused again, giving Harry time to run around it. "Run, Hermione, run!" Harry shouted, trying to draw the troll away from her, but Hermione couldn't move, still flat against the wall, her mouth open with terror. The shouting and echoing seemed to be driving the troll berserk. It roared and started toward Ron, who was nearest and had no way to escape. Harry acted instinctively. He took a running jump and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel Harry hanging there, but even a troll will notice when you stick a piece of wood up its nose, which is exactly what happened when Harry's wand, still clutched in his hand, went straight up one of the troll's nostrils. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flailed its club, with Harry clinging on for dear life. Any second, the troll was going to rip him off or catch him a terrible blow with the club. Harry remembered John's lessons on attacking larger opponents, target joints, use their weight against them, find vulnerabilities in seemingly impenetrable defenses. He pulled his wand free and jammed it into the troll's eye. The creature bellowed in agony, flinging Harry off. He hit the wall hard but rolled with the impact as John had taught him, coming up in a defensive stance. "Ron, the club," he shouted. Ron had pulled out his own wand, and whether from panic or inspiration, he performed the levitation spell perfectly. Wingardium Leviosa. The club flew suddenly out of the troll's hand, rose high into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped, with a sickening crack, onto its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot and then fell flat on its face with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Harry got to his feet, breathing hard. Ron stood with his wand still raised, staring at what he had done. Hermione spoke first, her voice small. "Is it dead?" "Just unconscious," Harry said, retrieving his wand from where it had fallen. "Nice spell work, Ron." "Thanks," Ron said, still looking stunned by what had happened. A sudden slamming and loud footsteps made the three of them look up. Professor McGonagall burst into the room, closely followed by Snape and Quirrell. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly down on a toilet, clutching his heart. Snape bent over the troll, while McGonagall was looking at Ron and Harry with fury in her eyes. "What on earth were you thinking?" said Professor McGonagall, cold anger in her voice. "You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory?" Then Hermione did something unexpected. "Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me. Miss Granger." Hermione had managed to get to her feet. "I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own, you know, because I've read all about them. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now." Harry stuck his wand up its nose and Ron knocked it out with its own club. "They didn't have time to come and fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived." Harry and Ron tried to look as though this story wasn't new to them. "Well, in that case," said Professor McGonagall, staring at the three of them. "Miss Granger, you foolish girl, how could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own?" Hermione hung her head. "Miss Granger, 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor for this, said Professor McGonagall. I'm very disappointed in you. As for you two gentlemen, well, not many first years could have taken on a full-grown mountain troll and lived to tell the tale. 5 points each to Gryffindor. Professor Dumbledore will be informed of this. You may go. They hurried out of the chamber and didn't speak at all until they had climbed 2 floors up. Harry checked Hermione for injuries while Ron awkwardly apologized for his earlier comments. From that moment on, Hermione Granger became their friend. There are some things you can't share without ending up liking each other, and knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them. When Harry called John that night, he described the incident in detail. You engaged a 12-foot troll, John's voice was flat, betraying no emotion. With a wooden stick. And Ron's levitation spell, Harry added. It worked out. You should have extracted the girl and retreated. Direct engagement was unnecessary. There wasn't time, Harry explained. The troll was too close to Hermione. A long silence. Then, you did well, Harry. Adapting to the situation. Using available resources. But next time, bring more firepower. I'll try to remember that when the next troll attacks. This is Hogwarts, John replied seriously. There will always be another threat. As November began, the weather turned cold. The mountains around the school became icy gray, and the lake like chilled steel. Frost covered the grounds every morning, and Hagrid could be seen defrosting broomsticks on the Quidditch field, bundled up in a long moleskin overcoat, rabbit fur gloves, and enormous beaver-skin boots. The Quidditch season had begun, and Harry's first match, Gryffindor versus Slytherin, approached rapidly. If Gryffindor won, they would move up into second place in the house championship. Few people had seen Harry play because Wood had decided that Harry would be their secret weapon. News that he was playing Seeker had leaked out somehow, however, and Harry was now subjected to either congratulations or threats of bodily harm from the Slytherin team. It was lucky that Harry had Hermione as a friend. He didn't know how he'd have gotten through all his homework without her, what with all the last-minute Quidditch practice Wood was making them do. She had also lent him Quidditch Through the Ages, which turned out to be a fascinating read. Harry learned that there were 700 ways of committing a Quidditch foul and that all of them had happened during a World Cup match in 1473, that Seekers were usually the smallest and fastest players, and that most serious Quidditch accidents seemed to happen to them, that although people rarely died playing Quidditch, referees had been known to vanish and turn up months later in the Sahara Desert. The day before Harry's first Quidditch match, the 3 friends were in the freezing courtyard during break, Hermione conjuring a bright blue fire that could be carried around in a jam jar. They were standing with their backs to it, getting warm, when Snape crossed the yard. Harry noticed that Snape was limping. Snape spotted them and limped over. He hadn't found a reason to take points from Gryffindor, but his eyes narrowed suspiciously at the jar of flames. "What's that you've got there, Potter?" Harry showed him Quidditch Through the Ages. "Library books are not to be taken outside the school," said Snape. "Give it to me." 5 points from Gryffindor. "That's not a real rule," Harry said calmly as Snape limped away. "He invented it." "Wonder what's wrong with his leg," said Ron. "Something from the 3rd-floor corridor," Harry surmised. "He went there Halloween night while everyone else was dealing with the troll." "You think he was trying to steal whatever the dog's guarding?" Hermione asked. Harry had told them about his exploration of the forbidden corridor and the monstrous 3-headed dog standing guard over a trapdoor. Possibly. Or checking that no one else was. That evening, Harry decided to ask Snape for his book back. He made his way to the staff room and knocked. There was no answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Perhaps Snape had left the book inside. Harry pushed the door ajar and peered inside, and a horrible scene met his eyes. Snape and Filch were alone. Snape was holding his robes above his knees. One of his legs was bloody and mangled. Filch was handing Snape bandages. "Blasted thing," Snape was saying. How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all three heads at once? Harry tried to close the door quietly, but, Potter. Snape's face was twisted with fury as he dropped his robes quickly to hide his leg. I was wondering if I could have my book back, Harry said evenly, meeting Snape's gaze without flinching. Get out. Out. Harry left before Snape could take any more points from Gryffindor. He sprinted back to the common room, where Ron and Hermione were playing chess. Did you get it? Ron asked as Harry joined them. What's wrong? In a low whisper, Harry told them what he'd seen. You know what this means, he finished breathlessly. Snape tried to get past that three-headed dog at Halloween. That's why he was up there. And I'd bet my broomstick he let that troll in, to create a diversion. Hermione's eyes were wide. But he's a teacher, he wouldn't try to steal something Dumbledore was keeping safe. Honestly, Hermione, you think all teachers are saints or something, Ron snapped. Harry's right. I wouldn't put anything past Snape. Harry wasn't entirely convinced Snape was after whatever the dog was guarding, but the professor's behavior was definitely suspicious. He made a mental note to discuss it with John during their next check-in. The next morning dawned bright and cold. The great hall was filled with the delicious smell of fried sausages and the cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to a good Quidditch match. Harry felt oddly calm. John's training had prepared him for high-pressure situations. Quidditch seemed trivial by comparison. You've got to eat some breakfast, Hermione insisted. I'm not hungry. Just a bit of toast, she wheedled. Hermione, I'm fine, Harry said firmly. Pre-mission jitters are normal. Food can wait until after. By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be out in the stands around the Quidditch pitch. Many students had binoculars. The seats might be raised high in the air, but it was still difficult to see what was going on sometimes. In the locker room, Wood gave his final instructions. Okay, men. And women, said Chaser Angelina Johnson. And women, Wood agreed. This is it. The big one, said Fred Weasley. The one we've all been waiting for, said George. We know Oliver's speech by heart, Fred told Harry. We were on the team last year. Shut up, you two, said Wood. This is the best team Gryffindor's had in years. We're going to win. I know it. He glared at them all as if to say, or else. Right. It's time. Good luck, all of you. Harry followed Fred and George out of the locker room and, hoping his knees weren't going to give way, walked onto the field to loud cheers. Madame Hooch was refereeing. She stood in the middle of the field waiting for the two teams, her broom in her hand. Now, I want a nice fair game, all of you, she said, once they were all gathered around her. Harry noticed that she seemed to be speaking particularly to the Slytherin captain, Marcus Flint, a sixth year. Flint looked like he had some troll blood in him, by Harry's assessment. Mount your brooms, please. Harry clambered onto his Nimbus 2000. Madame Hooch gave a loud blast on her silver whistle, and 15 brooms rose up into the air. The game began in earnest. Harry stayed above the main action, watching for the golden snitch while keeping an eye on the Slytherin seeker, Terence Higgs. The Gryffindor team was playing well, quickly taking the lead. Budge up there, move along. Hagrid. Ron and Hermione squeezed together to give Hagrid enough space to join them in the stands. Been watchin' from me hut, said Hagrid, patting a large pair of binoculars around his neck, but it isn't the same as bein' in the crowd. No sign of the snitch yet, eh? Nope, said Ron. Harry hasn't had much to do yet. Kept out of trouble, though, that's somethin', said Hagrid, raising his binoculars and peering skyward at the speck that was Harry. High above the game, Harry glided past the stands, scanning for the snitch. This was part of Wood's strategy, keep him out of harm's way until he spotted the snitch. Once, he spotted a flash of gold, but it was just one of the Weasley twins' wristwatches, and once a bludger decided to come pelting his way, but Harry dodged it, and Fred came chasing after it. All right there, Harry, he had time to yell, as he beat the bludger furiously toward Marcus Flint. Then it happened. Harry's broom gave a sudden, frightening lurch. For a split second, he thought he was going to fall. He gripped the broom tightly with both hands and knees, trying to maintain control. But the broom was completely unresponsive, jerking and twitching as though trying to buck him off. Harry tried to turn back toward the Gryffindor goalposts to signal Wood for a timeout, but the broom was completely beyond his control. He couldn't steer it. He couldn't signal to Wood. The broom was zigzagging through the air, making violent swishing movements that almost unseated him. In the stands, people were pointing at Harry. His broom had started to roll over and over, with him only just managing to hold on. The crowd gasped as the broom gave a wild jerk and Harry swung off it, now dangling from it with only one hand. Did something happen to it when Flint blocked him? Seamus whispered. Can't have, Hagrid said, his voice shaking. Can't nothing interfere with a broomstick except powerful dark magic? No kid could do that to a Nimbus 2000. At these words, Hermione seized Hagrid's binoculars and started scanning the crowd. What are you doing? Moaned Ron, grey-faced. I knew it, Hermione gasped. Snape, look. Ron grabbed the binoculars. Snape was in the middle of the stands opposite them. He had his eyes fixed on Harry and was muttering non-stop under his breath. He's doing something, jinxing the broom, said Hermione. What should we do? Leave it to me. Harry was fighting a losing battle with his broom. It was vibrating so hard, it was almost impossible to hang on much longer. The whole crowd was on its feet, watching, terrified, as the Weasleys flew up to try and pull Harry safely onto one of their brooms, but it was no good. Every time they got near him, the broom would jump higher still. They dropped lower and circled beneath him, hoping to catch him if he fell. Harry assessed his options rapidly. The fall would likely be survivable with proper technique. John had trained him to fall from heights. But surrendering wasn't in his nature. He inched his hand back toward the broom, using core muscles to pull himself upward in small increments. Meanwhile, Hermione had fought her way across to the stand where Snape stood, and was now racing along the row behind him. She didn't even stop to say sorry as she knocked Professor Quirrell headfirst into the row in front. Reaching Snape, she crouched down, pulled out her wand, and whispered a few, well-chosen words. Bright blue flames shot from her wand onto the hem of Snape's robes. It took perhaps 30 seconds for Snape to realize that he was on fire. A sudden yelp told her she had done her job. Scooping the fire off him into a little jar in her pocket, she scrambled back along the row. Snape would never know what had happened. Up in the air, Harry was suddenly able to clamber back onto his broom. He steadied himself, took a deep breath, and assessed the situation. The game was still ongoing. No one had called a timeout despite his near-death experience. Gryffindor still led, but the Slytherins were catching up while everyone had been watching Harry's struggle. And then Harry spotted it. The snitch was hovering near the Slytherin goalposts. He accelerated toward it, determination written across his face. The Slytherin seeker saw his movement and raced to intercept. Harry pushed his broom faster, ignoring the lingering wobble in the handle. The two seekers converged on the snitch, which dropped suddenly toward the ground. Both players dove after it. Higgs pulled out of the dive, unwilling to risk a collision with the earth. Harry held his course, calculating his maximum safe velocity. At the last possible moment, he pulled up, his feet skimming the grass, arm outstretched. He felt his fingers close around the cold metal of the snitch just before momentum carried him forward off his broom. Harry tucked and rolled exactly as John had taught him, coming up on his feet with the snitch held high. "I've got the snitch," he shouted, waving it above his head. The game ended in complete confusion. The Slytherins protested that Harry hadn't caught the snitch but nearly swallowed it, but since there was no rule against that, Gryffindor won by 170 points to 60. After changing, Harry was invited to Hagrid's hut for a cup of tea with Ron and Hermione. As they sat drinking strong tea, Harry described the sensation of his broom being jinxed. It was Snape, Ron explained. Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing your broomstick, muttering, wouldn't take his eyes off you. Rubbish, said Hagrid, who hadn't heard a word of what had gone on in the stands. Why would Snape do something like that? The three friends looked at one another. Harry decided to tell Hagrid. I found out something about him, he said to Hagrid. He tried to get past that three-headed dog on Halloween. It bit him. We think he was trying to steal whatever it's guarding. Hagrid dropped the teapot. How do you know about Fluffy? Fluffy? Ron exclaimed. That thing has a name. Yeah, he's mine, bought him off a Greek chappie I met in a pub last year, I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the, yes, said Harry eagerly. Now, don't ask me any more, said Hagrid gruffly. That's top secret, that is. But Snape's trying to steal it. Rubbish, said Hagrid again. Snape's a Hogwarts teacher, he'd do nothing of the sort. So why did he just try to kill Harry? Cried Hermione. The afternoon's events certainly seemed to have changed her mind about Snape. I know a jinx when I see one, Hagrid. I've read all about them. You've got to keep eye contact, and Snape wasn't blinking at all, I saw him. I'm tellin', yeah, you're wrong, said Hagrid hotly. I don't know why Harry's broom acted like that, but Snape wouldn't try and kill a student. Now, listen to me, all three of ya, you're meddlin' in things that don't concern ya. It's dangerous. You forget that dog, and you forget what it's guardin', that's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel, aha, said Harry. So there's someone called Nicholas Flamel involved, is there? Hagrid looked furious with himself. That night, Harry reported the entire incident to John, including the jinxed broom and the mention of Nicholas Flamel. The broom was definitely tampered with? John asked. Yes. Hermione saw Snape maintaining eye contact and muttering. And when she broke his concentration, the broom stabilized. That's the theory, Harry confirmed. But Hagrid doesn't believe Snape would try to hurt a student. Trust patterns, not individuals, John reminded him. If Snape is after whatever this Flamel person created, he's a threat. Do you know who Nicholas Flamel is? Name sounds familiar. I'll check with Winston. 3 days later, Harry received a small package delivered by an ordinary-looking owl. Inside was a single sheet of paper with John's precise handwriting, Nicholas Flamel, alchemist, creator of the Philosopher's Stone. Grants immortality through the elixir of life. Stone likely what's being guarded. Extreme value to anyone seeking power or eternal life. Increased security measures advised. Harry shared the information with Ron and Hermione, who were impressed by how quickly John had obtained it. How does your godfather know all this stuff? Ron asked in amazement. Continental resources, Harry replied simply. The Philosopher's Stone, Hermione whispered. Of course. I can't believe I didn't think of it myself. I checked out a book about famous alchemists weeks ago for a bit of light reading. Light? Ron mouthed silently to Harry. As November turned into December, Hogwarts became increasingly festive. The castle was filled with the smell of Christmas cooking, roaring fires in every fireplace, and decorations throughout the corridors. Harry had never experienced Christmas in such an environment before. He and John typically spent the holiday quietly at home, with small practical gifts and a special dinner. One morning in mid-December, students awoke to find Hogwarts covered in several feet of snow. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs to follow Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. The few owls that managed to battle their way through the stormy sky had to be nursed back to health by Hagrid before they could fly again. Harry grew increasingly excited about his first Christmas at Hogwarts, especially after learning that Ron and his brothers would be staying too, as their parents were visiting their older brother Charlie in Romania. When they left the dungeons after a particularly unpleasant potions lesson, they found a large fir tree blocking the corridor ahead. 2 enormous feet sticking out at the bottom, and a loud puffing sound told them that Hagrid was behind it. "Hi, Hagrid, want any help?" Ron asked, sticking his head through the branches. "Nah, I'm all right, thanks, Ron." "Would you mind moving out of the way?" came Malfoy's cold drawl from behind them. "Trying to earn some extra money, Weasley? Hoping to be gamekeeper yourself when you leave Hogwarts, I suppose. That hut of Hagrid's must seem like a palace compared to what your family's used to." Ron dived at Malfoy just as Snape came up the stairs. "Weasley!" Ron let go of the front of Malfoy's robes. "He was provoked, Professor Snape," said Hagrid, sticking his huge hairy face out from behind the tree. "Malfoy was insulting his family." "Be that as it may, fighting is against Hogwarts rules, Hagrid," said Snape silkily. 5 points from Gryffindor, Weasley, and be grateful it isn't more." Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle pushed roughly past the tree, scattering needles everywhere and smirking. "I'll get him," said Ron, grinding his teeth at Malfoy's back. "One of these days, I'll get him. Revenge isn't about emotion," Harry said quietly. "It's about patience and planning." Ron and Hagrid both looked at him in surprise. "That sounds like something your godfather would say," Hagrid commented. Harry nodded. "It is." "Come on, cheer up, it's nearly Christmas," said Hagrid. "Tell ya what, come with me and see the Great Hall, looks a treat." They followed Hagrid and his tree to the Great Hall, where Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy with the Christmas decorations. "Ah, Hagrid, the last tree, put it in the far corner, would you?" The hall looked spectacular. Festoons of holly and mistletoe hung all around the walls, and no less than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny icicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. "How many days you got left until your holidays?" Hagrid asked. "Just one," said Hermione. "And that reminds me, Harry, Ron, we've got half an hour before lunch, we should be in the library." "Oh yeah, you're right," said Ron, tearing his eyes away from Professor Flitwick, who had golden bubbles blossoming out of his wand and was trailing them over the branches of the new tree. "The library," said Hagrid, following them out of the hall. "Just before the holidays. Bit keen, aren't ya?" "Oh, we're not working," Harry told him brightly. "We're researching Nicholas Flamel." "You what?" Hagrid looked shocked. "Listen here, I've told ya, drop it. It's nothin' to you what that dog's garden. We just want to know who Nicholas Flamel is, that's all," said Hermione innocently. "Unless you'd like to save us the trouble," Harry added. "We already know he created the Philosopher's Stone. We just need details about why someone would want to steal it." Hagrid looked furious. "I don't know how ya found out about the stone, but stop poking around. What that dog's garden is strictly between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel, so Flamel is involved," said Hermione. "Course he is." Wait, you already knew that." Hagrid looked outraged at being tricked. "My godfather has resources," Harry explained. "Now we just need to figure out who's trying to steal it." They left Hagrid spluttering in indignation and headed for the library, where they continued researching protective enchantments and the stone's properties. The next day, term ended, and most of the castle emptied as students headed home for the holidays. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had the Gryffindor common room to themselves, able to get the good armchairs by the fire. They roasted anything they could find on long forks, bread, English muffins, marshmallows, and plotted ways to get Malfoy expelled, though Harry reminded them it was just talk. On Christmas Eve, Harry went to bed looking forward to the next day. When he woke early in the morning, the first thing he saw was a small pile of packages at the foot of his bed. "Merry Christmas," said Ron sleepily as Harry scrambled out of bed. "You, too," said Harry. "Will you look at this? I've got presents." "What did you expect, turnips?" said Ron, turning to his own pile, which was a lot bigger than Harry's. Harry picked up the top parcel. It was wrapped in heavy brown paper and scrawled across it was, "To Harry, from Hagrid. Inside was a roughly cut wooden flute. Hagrid had obviously whittled it himself. Harry blew it. It sounded a bit like an owl. A second package contained what appeared to be a handmade sweater in emerald green with a large H on the front, and a box of homemade fudge. "My mom," Ron explained, turning red. "I told her you didn't expect many presents and, oh, no, she's made you a Weasley sweater." The next present was from Hermione, a large box of chocolate frogs. This left only one parcel, which turned out to be from John. Harry opened it carefully, knowing his godfather's preference for practical gifts. Inside was a set of throwing knives disguised as quill nibs, a book on advanced tactical movement, and a small box containing what appeared to be a normal wristwatch. A note explained that the watch contained a GPS tracker, emergency beacon, and could detect certain poisons when placed near food or drink. "Blimey," Ron said, examining the watch. "Your godfather doesn't mess around, does he?" Harry smiled, fastening the watch to his wrist. "Christmas has always been practical in our house." One last package remained, small and light, wrapped in plain paper. Harry unwrapped it and something fluid and silvery gray went slithering to the floor, where it lay in gleaming folds. Ron gasped. "I've heard of those. If that's what I think it is, they're really rare, and really valuable." "What is it?" Harry picked up the shining, silvery cloth. It was strange to the touch, like water woven into material. "It's an invisibility cloak," said Ron, a look of awe on his face. "Try it on." Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders, and Ron gave a yell. "It is." "Look down." Harry looked down at his feet, but they were gone. He dashed to the mirror and saw only his head suspended in midair, his body completely invisible. "There's a note," said Ron suddenly. A note fell out of it. Harry pulled off the cloak and seized the letter. Written in narrow, loopy writing he had never seen before were the following words: "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well." There was no signature. "I'd give anything for one of these," Ron said, admiring the cloak. "Anything. What's the matter?" "Nothing," said Harry, feeling strange. Who had sent the cloak? Had it really once belonged to his father? He needed to tell John about this immediately. Before he could use his satellite phone, however, Fred and George Weasley bounded in, wearing blue sweaters with large letters, F and G, on them. "Merry Christmas." "Hey, look, Harry's got a Weasley sweater, too." The rest of Christmas Day passed in a blur of celebration. Harry had never experienced anything like the Hogwarts Christmas feast before: 100 fat, roast turkeys, mountains of roast and boiled potatoes, platters of chipolatas, tureens of buttered peas, silver boats of thick, rich gravy and cranberry sauce, and stacks of wizard crackers every few feet along the table. Harry pulled a wizard cracker with Fred and it went off with a blast like a cannon, engulfing them in a cloud of blue smoke, while from the inside exploded a rear admiral's hat and several live, white mice. That evening, after a meal of turkey sandwiches, crumpets, trifle, and Christmas cake, Harry finally managed to contact John. His godfather listened silently as Harry described the invisibility cloak. "Your father's," John confirmed when Harry finished. "I remember it." "You knew about it?" "James used it frequently. It's a family heirloom, extremely rare, extremely valuable." "But who sent it to me?" "The note wasn't signed." "Dumbledore," John said without hesitation. "He had possession of several of your parents' items after their deaths." "Should I trust it?" Harry asked. "Could it be compromised?" "Possible but unlikely. Test it in controlled environments first. Don't rely on it exclusively for concealment." "I will," Harry promised. Then, after a moment's hesitation, "Merry Christmas, John." "Merry Christmas, Harry." Over the next few days, Harry tested the invisibility cloak extensively. It appeared to function perfectly, concealing him completely even from Mrs. Norris, Filch's watchful cat. With this new tool, Harry's nighttime explorations of Hogwarts expanded significantly. One night, avoiding Filch, Harry slipped into an unused classroom. It looked like an ordinary classroom, with desks and chairs stacked against the walls. But propped against the wall facing him was something that didn't belong there, a magnificent mirror, as high as the ceiling, with an ornate gold frame, standing on two clawed feet. An inscription carved around the top read, Erised stra eru oit ube kafru oit anwosi. Harry approached the mirror cautiously, checking for traps or enchantments. Seeing nothing obviously dangerous, he stepped in front of it, and had to clap his hand to his mouth to stop himself from screaming. He had seen his reflection, but he wasn't alone. Standing behind him were at least 10 others. He whirled around, but the room was empty. He turned back to the mirror, breathing rapidly. There they were, his mother and father smiling at him. And behind them, others who had the same green eyes as him, the same knees as him, his family. Harry stood transfixed, unable to look away from the people he'd lost. A noise in the corridor broke the spell. Harry threw the cloak back over himself just as Mrs. Norris came prowling in. After she left, Harry took one last look at his family before slipping out. The next night, he brought Ron to see the mirror. Strangely, Ron didn't see Harry's family but himself standing alone, holding the Quidditch cup as head boy and Quidditch captain. Harry returned a third night, drawn by the image of his parents. He sat cross-legged on the floor, staring hungrily at the reflections. Back again, Harry. Harry felt as if his insides had turned to ice. He looked behind him. Albus Dumbledore was sitting on one of the desks by the wall. I didn't see you, sir. Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you, said Dumbledore, smiling. So, you, like hundreds before you, have discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erised. I didn't know it was called that, sir. But I expect you've realized by now what it does. Harry considered the inscription, reading it backward. It shows us what we want. Yes and no, said Dumbledore quietly. It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts. You, who have never known your family, see them standing around you. Ronald Weasley, who has always been overshadowed by his brothers, sees himself standing alone, the best of all of them. Dumbledore moved beside Harry. However, this mirror will give us neither knowledge nor truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen, or been driven mad, not knowing if what it shows is real or even possible. The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry, and I ask you not to go looking for it again. If you ever do run across it, you will now be prepared. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Harry nodded, accepting the wisdom in Dumbledore's words. May I ask a question, sir? You've just done so, but you may ask another. What do you see when you look in the mirror? I see myself holding a pair of thick, woolen socks. One can never have enough socks. Harry stared. Another Christmas has come and gone and I didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books. Harry recognized the deflection but didn't press. As he walked back to Gryffindor Tower, he thought about what the mirror had shown him, and what it hadn't. He'd seen his parents and extended family, but John hadn't appeared in the reflection. Why not? Perhaps because John was still alive, still part of his life. Not lost to him like the others. When term resumed after the holidays, Hermione returned with a new research schedule for them regarding Nicholas Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone. Though Harry had already shared John's information about the stone, Hermione insisted they needed more details about its properties and vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Harry had started receiving regular training updates from John via the secure phone. New conditioning routines, tactical exercises he could practice in the Room of Requirement, a hidden room Harry had discovered during his explorations that could transform itself based on the user's needs. The Quidditch season continued, with Gryffindor's next match against Hufflepuff approaching. Wood increased their training sessions despite the rain that had replaced the snow. During one particularly muddy practice, Wood gave the team bad news. Snape's refereeing the next match. Snape's refereeing? George Weasley spluttered. When's he ever refereed a Quidditch match? He's not going to be fair if we might overtake Slytherin. The rest of the team began voicing similar concerns, but Harry remained quiet, calculating options. "It's not my fault," said Wood. "We've just got to make sure we play a clean game, so Snape hasn't got an excuse to pick on us." After practice, Harry immediately called John to report this development. "Snape will be in a position to control the match," he explained. "If he's after the stone and tried to kill me before, this gives him another opportunity." "Who else will be present?" John asked. "All the teachers, students. Dumbledore usually attends matches." "Dumbledore's presence significantly reduces the threat level," John assessed. "Public assassination attempt unlikely. Prepare for subtler interference. Recommendations: maintain situational awareness. Complete mission quickly. Minimum time exposure." Harry felt better after talking to John. When he told Ron and Hermione about Snape's refereeing, however, they were less calm. "Don't play," said Hermione at once. "Say you're ill," said Ron. "Pretend to break your leg," Hermione suggested. "Really break your leg," said Ron. "I can't," Harry replied. "There isn't a reserve seeker. If I back out, Gryffindor can't play at all." "But what if Snape tries to hurt you again?" Hermione asked anxiously. Harry smiled grimly. "Then I'll deal with it." At that moment, Neville toppled into the common room, his legs stuck together with the leg locker curse. Everyone fell over laughing except Hermione, who leapt up and performed the counter curse. "What happened?" she asked, leading Neville to sit with them. "Malfoy," said Neville shakily. "I met him outside the library. He said he'd been looking for someone to practice that on." "Report him," Hermione urged. "Go to Professor McGonagall." Neville shook his head. "I don't want more trouble." "You're letting Malfoy walk all over you," said Ron. "You need to stand up to him." "There's no need to tell me I'm not brave enough to be in Gryffindor," Neville choked out. "Malfoy's already done that." Harry reached into his pocket and pulled out a chocolate frog. He handed it to Neville. "You're worth 12 of Malfoy," Harry said firmly. "The Sorting Hat put you in Gryffindor, didn't it? It saw something in you that you don't see yet." Neville's lips twitched in a weak smile as he unwrapped the frog. "Thanks, Harry. I think I'll go to bed. Want the card? You collect them, don't you?" As Neville walked away, Harry looked at the famous wizard card. "Dumbledore again. I got him on my first chocolate frog." He turned the card over and suddenly gasped. He stared at the back of the card, then looked up at Ron and Hermione. "I found him," he whispered. "I found additional information on Flamel. Listen to this. Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner, Nicholas Flamel." Hermione jumped to her feet. "Stay there," she said, and sprinted up the stairs to the girls' dormitories. She returned moments later with an enormous old book. "I never thought to look in here," she whispered excitedly. "I got this out of the library weeks ago for a bit of light reading." "Light?" said Ron, but Hermione told him to be quiet until she'd looked something up. She flicked frantically through the pages, muttering to herself. At last she found what she was looking for. "I knew it. Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone." "We already knew that," Ron pointed out. "Harry's godfather told us." "Yes, but this gives us more details," said Hermione. "The Philosopher's Stone can transform any metal into pure gold. It also produces the elixir of life, which will make the drinker immortal. Mr. Flamel is 665 years old. No wonder Snape wants it, said Ron. Anyone would. And no wonder we couldn't find Flamel in study of recent developments in wizardry, said Harry. He's not exactly recent if he's 665, is he? As the Quidditch match drew nearer, Harry became increasingly tense. The rest of the team wasn't playing too well during practices, they were too nervous about Snape's refereeing. But Harry had been in far more dangerous situations under John's training. This was just another mission with clear parameters: find the snitch, catch it quickly, minimize exposure. When match day arrived, Harry felt oddly calm as he joined the rest of the team in the locker rooms. Wood had taken Harry aside. Don't want to pressure you, Potter, but if we ever need an early capture of the snitch, it's now. Finish the game before Snape can favor Hufflepuff too much. I'll handle it, Harry said confidently. As they walked onto the field, Harry noticed something that made his heart leap: Dumbledore was in the stands. Snape couldn't try anything with Dumbledore watching. Perhaps that's why Snape looked so angry as the teams marched onto the field. I've never seen Snape look so mean, Ron told Hermione. Look, they're off. Ouch. Someone had poked Ron in the back of the head. It was Malfoy. Oh, sorry, Weasley, didn't see you there. Malfoy grinned broadly at Crabbe and Goyle. Wonder how long Potter's going to stay on his broom this time. Anyone want a bet? What about you, Weasley? Ron didn't answer. Snape had just awarded Hufflepuff a penalty because George Weasley had hit a bludger at him. Hermione, who had all her fingers crossed in her lap, was squinting fixedly at Harry, who was circling the game like a hawk, looking for the snitch. You know how I think they choose people for the Gryffindor team? Said Malfoy loudly a few minutes later, as Snape awarded Hufflepuff another penalty for no reason at all. It's people they feel sorry for. See, there's Potter, who's got no parents, then there's the Weasleys, who've got no money. You should be on the team, Longbottom, you've got no brains. Neville went bright red but turned in his seat to face Malfoy. I'm worth 12 of you, Malfoy, he stammered. Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle howled with laughter, but Ron, still not daring to take his eyes from the game, said, You tell him, Neville. Longbottom, if brains were gold you'd be poorer than Weasley, and that's saying something. Ron's nerves were already stretched to the breaking point with anxiety about Harry. I'm warning you, something went wrong with this response, please try again. Open the next chapter and go on. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.